The life of every Avatar. The world of Avatar wouldn't be anything without, well, the Avatar. Unified with the spirit of Raava, the Avatar serves as the bridge between the spirit and physical worlds and is the only person capable of bending all four elements. Also, due to their connection with Raava, the Avatar reincarnates through the cycle of elements, water, earth, fire, and air, reborn into each nation successively. The Avatar has been reincarnated an unknown number of times, but the Avatar Wiki estimates that there have been approximately 133 avatars from Wan to Korra. We don't know them all, but that won't stop us from telling you everything we do know about the ones that have been recorded. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of every known Avatar. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Wan. Wan grew up in a city built on the back of a fire lion turtle. Living in poverty, Wan's main goal was to survive and feed his friends, which he achieved by regularly stealing from the ruling Chu family, relying on his agility and ingenuity to do so. One day, he was chased down the streets of the city by the three angry Chu brothers. At first, he managed to outrun them by making his way across the rooftops, but when he stopped to eat, the brothers caught up to him. Though Wan attempted to escape again, he was tripped by one of the brothers and subsequently captured. His sack of food was taken away and he was thrown from the roof into a muddy pen with hybrid pigs. When he eventually returned to his treehouse, he offered his friends Jaya and Yao what little food he had managed to salvage by hiding it in his tunic, giving away his own portion to several hungry animals. He lamented their impoverished lifestyle and wished they could live in luxury like the Chus. Motivated by this desire, he devised a plan to gain more power so he could change his life. When he was 18, Wan joined a group of 4 hunters that was preparing to leave the city and venture into the spirit wilds to collect food. Although the lead hunter was at first skeptical to let Wan join, he relented since there were no other willing volunteers. The group traveled to the face of the lion turtle, the guardian of their city, to receive the power of firebending, which would enable them to defend themselves against the hostile spirits living in the spirit wilds. Soon after the group set off, Wan pretended to chicken out, and was subsequently ordered to go back to the lion turtle to return his bending ability. Instead, Wan returned directly to the city and kept his fire. He ignored Jaya's protests to return the element, and inspired several other poor people to join him on a secret raid on the Chu palace. Although the raid started out smoothly, the Chu brothers called in reinforcements and Wan was captured after he was accidentally unmasked by Little Chu. He was brought before the lion turtle, and though the creature permitted him to keep his fire at his request, Wan was banished to the spirit wilds for his crimes. As he wandered the wilds, Wan remained on edge, shooting flames at every spirit he encountered. While running away from a frog spirit, Wan was eaten by a plant, though he managed to save himself with his bending. He ran on until he collapsed from exhaustion on an open grassy spot. However, much to his surprise, the grass started to wrap itself around him and pulled him underground. He used his fire to save himself from certain death by suffocation and continued his journey through the wilderness. Afraid to lower his guard in the hostile environment, he remained awake the entire night. By morning, his hunger and exhaustion prompted him to stop at what he perceived to be a fruit-carrying tree. As he tried to sink his teeth into what he thought was a fruit, it dissipated into a swarm of bees which had been tightly huddled together. They promptly attacked Wan for his disturbance. As he desperately attempted to get away from the angered insects, he stumbled over a cliff. At the bottom, he discovered an island-like oasis with more fruit trees. Still hungry, he made his way toward the island, but found his path blocked by an Ai spirit who suddenly appeared and told him he was not welcome at the oasis. Wan tried to reason with the spirit, telling the entity that he was hungry and in need of sleep. The spirit coldly replied that Wan's troubles were not his problem, so the man attempted to force the creature aside with firebending. Enraged, the spirit returned Wan's challenge and easily evaded his attacks by teleporting behind him, before grabbing and throwing him aside into a nearby bush. Juan walked away in defeat, but when he noticed that several other spirits were granted access to the oasis, he covered himself in leaves and branches, disguising himself as Bushy the Bush Spirit. Though he briefly managed to fool the Oasis Guardian, the spirit discovered his deception through his human scent. When ordered to return home, Juan admitted that he was banished, earning pity from the other spirits. They suggested he find other lion turtle cities to live in, but the Eye Guardian refused to give him directions, making a joke out of it, which irritated the firebender. Juan subsequently set out to find the other lion turtle cities on his own. On his travels, he spotted a cat deer caught in a net. Still hungry, he approached it with the intent of eating it. However, after seeing the creature up close, he felt sorry for it and climbed into the tree it hung from in an attempt to free it. At that moment, the group of hunters he had accompanied before arrived to claim the cat deer. Juan shot flames at the hunters and ran off, hoping the men would forget about the animal and chase him. Having experienced the dangers of the spirit wilds himself, he used the hazards to his advantage to dispatch 2 of his pursuers. Before he could rid himself completely of the hunters, Juan was struck by a fire blast that flung him against a tree branch, rendering him unconscious. Before the men could do anything, the Eye spirit, touched by Juan's selfless act, intervened and saved him. Juan was brought back to the oasis by the spirit, where he was placed in the mystic waters and healed. Deciding he'd had enough of humans, Juan resolved to stay at the oasis and learn the way of the spirits, earning the nickname Stinky from the Eye spirit. As time went by, Juan became known as a friend to the spirits. He developed his firebending skills further by learning the dancing dragon form from a white dragon, training himself to the point where his bending became an extension of his own body rather than just a tool. With these abilities, he protected the spirits and drove off hostile humans from the wilds. 2 years after his banishment, Juan decided to travel the world to find other lion turtle cities and left the spirit oasis with Mula, the cat deer he had saved. During his journey, he encountered a stampede of fleeing spirits who told him they were running away from a raging fight between all-powerful spirits. Concerned about the severe damage the battle could inflict on the valley, Juan went to investigate. He found 2 raging spirits, and oblivious to their identity, ordered them to stop. The white spirit, Raava, told him off, saying the fight did not concern him. He objected, telling her it was his concern when the lives of spirits and animals were at stake. At that, the dark spirit Vaatu begged him for help and said he had been tortured by his counterpart for 10,000 years. Juan then used his firebending to break Raava's hold on Vaatu. In doing so, however, Vaatu was free to spread chaos across the world. It was only when Raava explained who she was and that her purpose was to keep Vaatu in check that Juan realized his error. Feeling bad about his mistake, Juan offered to help Raava track down Vaatu, but he was told to stay out of the conflict. After the light spirit flew away, he resumed his original goal of finding the other lion turtle cities. Along the way, he came across harvesters with the ability to bend the air, and after unintentionally scaring them away, he followed them to their city, which was built atop a flying lion turtle. With no ability to naturally ascend to the airborne city, Juan constructed a catapult from a living tree and successfully flung himself toward the air lion turtle. While conversing with the people living there, Vaatu arrived. His presence turned the peaceful spirits living in the town into raging dark entities. Juan used his firebending to protect the people until Raava appeared and subdued Vaatu. After Vaatu gloated on how he would destroy her during the next harmonic convergence, Juan noticed that Raava was growing weaker. Despite her disdain for him, Juan promised to rectify his prior mistake and help Raava fight Vaatu. However, he would need to be stronger. He approached the air lion turtle and requested that he be granted the power to airbend. Though no human had ever possessed 2 elements before, Juan insisted that he was unlike other humans and could learn to do so. The lion turtle agreed to give Juan the power of air, but Raava would have to hold the power for him until he mastered it. Together, the 2 set out to train. Eventually, Raava gave the element of air to Juan by passing through his body and combining their energies. Though it was a dangerous undertaking, Juan survived the ordeal, and the small yet unlikely alliance set out to find the water and earth lion turtles to receive the last 2 elements. Over the course of a year, Juan and Raava worked together, training to master the 4 elements in order to face and defeat Vaatu by the time of the harmonic convergence. As the event drew near, Juan and Raava came across a village in the spirit wilds near the fire lion turtle, which was inhabited by Juan's friends. However, the hostile attitude of the settlers fomented the ever-increasing discontent between mankind and the spirits. When a gathering of spirits led by the Eye spirit approached the village, Juan attempted to resolve the conflict peacefully, but Vaatu's arrival corrupted the spirits and the conflict escalated, prompting Juan and Raava to intervene. To be powerful enough to control the four elements simultaneously, Wan and Raava merged their energies, but Wan could not keep up with the subsequent strain on his body and he passed out. When he regained consciousness, he found the village destroyed and was informed by Vaatu that all the humans had been annihilated. As Vaatu left, promising that the end of the world was nearing, Wan found a severely weakened Raava behind a rock. He gently picked her up and placed her in his teapot for easy transportation and set out toward the southern spirit portal. As they drew near the portal on the day of harmonic convergence, Raava apologized for her prejudiced view of Wan, as she had been unaware that humans had the capability of displaying nobility and courage. In response, he reassured her that they would be able to defeat Vaatu by working together. Wan and Raava traveled through the southern portal into the spirit world, while Vaatu emerged from the northern portal. The dark spirit challenged Raava, but Wan stepped forward to defend her. Using his firebending, Wan attacked Vaatu, though the spirit easily evaded his blasts and retaliated with his tendrils and energy beams. Realizing he was no match for Vaatu, he called upon Raava to help him by merging their energies once more. With the additional boost, and despite the mortal danger the merge placed him in, Wan delivered a few powerful fire streams at Vaatu. As harmonic convergence began, Vaatu knocked Wan down and pinned him to the ground near the southern portal. Refusing to give up and desperate to defeat Vaatu, Wan placed his hand on the spirit portal and permanently bonded his spirit with Raava's, making Wan the first Avatar. Finding newfound strength in the Avatar state, Wan was able to trap Vaatu in an elemental cage and imprisoned him in the hollow of the Tree of Time in the spirit world. He subsequently closed the northern spirit portal in order to prevent any human from ever physically entering the spirit world and accidentally releasing Vaatu. Because of the ever-present conflict between spirits and mankind, Wan guided the spirits in the mortal world to the spirit world via the southern portal and closed that portal as well. He announced that, as the Avatar, he would be the bridge between the two worlds and would work to maintain balance in the world of man while teaching them to respect the spirits. Over time, Wan continued his goal to maintain the balance in the world, urging different groups of people to coexist peacefully. However, this proved to be a daunting task, one that he worked toward throughout his lifetime without ever seeing an end to. Years later, an armored and elderly Wan lay dying in the aftermath of a battle. Before passing away, Wan apologized to Raava for failing to bring peace to the world. However, the Light Spirit reassured him that they would always be together and his quest would continue through his subsequent lifetimes. With that, Wan exhaled his last breath and his spirit, merged with Raava's, left his body to be reincarnated, thus beginning the Avatar cycle. As the first Avatar, Wan established the title as one who promotes world peace and maintains the balance between the physical and spiritual realms. His fusion with Raava also created the Avatar spirit and cycle, which ensured the reincarnation of the Avatar into a person born to the next nation, corresponding to the order in which he learned his bending abilities, namely fire, air, water, and earth. Wan's story, however, along with most of the knowledge from his time, faded through the succeeding centuries, turning into legend. Those who were aware of his story met his decision to close the spirit portals with criticism, deeming his actions as either foolish or misguided. Even his own incarnation, Avatar Korra, despite her initial intent on closing the portals, decided to keep them open to usher in a new era where humans and spirits could live in harmony. The Red Lotus was one of the few organizations to know his story and spread it among his members, including Unalaq and Zahir. It became the organization's goal to open the spirit portals with the hope of releasing Vaatu, believing that disorder would ultimately bring balance to the world. Unalaq, however, later betrayed the organization to pursue his personal goal of fusing with Vaatu to become the Dark Avatar. A statue of Wan remained inside the Hall of Avatar statues in the Southern Air Temple Sanctuary. The statue is unique in that it is carved from wood and has deteriorated over time, whereas most of the others are stone. It depicts Wan being embraced by an image of Raava. Jinora, while on a family visit to the Southern Air Temple, found herself drawn to the statue. Concurrent with Korra's success in bringing back the Southern Lights, Wan's statue, though stored in a shadowed alcove deep in the sanctuary, shone brightly. In 171 AG, Avatar Wan appeared in a vision to an amnesiac Korra, who had tried to reconnect with her deepest Avatar memories to find Raava. Wan helped her accomplish this by showing her how he became the first Avatar. Later, while Unalaq was attacking Raava during harmonic convergence, Korra saw Wan at the end of a lineup of avatars in a vision. After the chief dealt a final blow to the light spirit, Wan was the last avatar to disappear, signifying that the connection to Korra's past lives was severed. However, due to the Tree of Time's connection to the cosmic energy, Korra's memories of Wan were displayed inside the tree's hollow when she entered it to meditate. Gun. Avatar Gun had a close companion in Misose, a poet and engineer whom they nicknamed Seisei. The latter would write treatises, and Gun liked to read or listen to these texts. Eventually, Gun and Misose found themselves at the harbor city of Han when it was hit by a tsunami. Gun attempted to stop the natural disaster, but they could only weaken it. Large parts of Han were destroyed, and Misose died in the floods despite Gun's efforts at saving the scholar. Devastated at this loss, Gun disappeared for an extended period of time before resuming their duties as Avatar. Gun was recorded as having failed to stop the tsunami at Han, even though the city survived and would eventually prosper again. Jetson would speculate that Gun themselves had demanded that this incident be labeled as a failure of theirs, considering that they had lost Misose. Eventually, an 8-year-old Yangchen, possessed by Gun, would relive the day when Misose died. Setzo. Setzo was born into an era of great strife in the Fire Nation. Plagues and natural disasters destroyed the people's livelihoods, while violent conflicts between the nation's noble clans threatened to tear the nation apart. To rescue his homeland, Setzo opted for an extremely unusual approach. Instead of taking control himself or forcefully trying to enforce his decisions as was his right as Avatar, he became a junior minister in the Fire Nation's government. He rejected any privileges and began to work as a regular official, advancing in the ranks according to his achievements instead of any birthrights. He accepted orders from Fire Lord Yosor and senior ministers and began to improve his country by using its bureaucracy. Proving himself to be a talented bureaucrat, diplomat, and accountant, Setzo reinforced the government's authority, as him working for the Fire Lord meant that all of his achievements also positively reflected on the Fire Nation's central government. Eventually, he was appointed Grand Advisor to Fire Lord Yosor, and brokered a lasting peace among the noble clans. Thereafter, Setzo concentrated on restoring the Fire Nation's economy, which had greatly suffered from unrest and mismanagement. As Grand Advisor, he ended the debasement of coins and set up the first official relief programs for farmers in times of famine. All the while, he kept meticulous records of his work. Setzo eventually died and was reincarnated as Yangchen of the Western Air Temple in accordance with the Avatar cycle. After his death, he was included alongside the other fire avatars in the Fire Nation Royal Palace's Royal Gallery. His painting depicted him in his trademark minister robes, holding an abacus and a large stamp. He became a revered figure in the Fire Nation, and a festival was set up in his honor. Setzo was also a very respected figure in the other nations, and his successor Yangchen struggled to live up to him as a young woman, though she later became a revered figure in her own right. Setzo first appeared to Aang in a spiritual vision directed by Avatar Roku, in which he was lava-bending the magma from 4 volcanoes while in the Avatar state. The young airbender saw him again briefly in a similar vision during the battle at Wulong Forest, this time among a great number of avatars all standing in a line upon regaining his ability to enter the Avatar state. Aang temporarily lost his connection to Setzo after removing the firebending emblem from his meditation beads. However, upon crafting and attaching a new one, he saw him again in a lineup of his past lives to indicate his restored link. Setzo was present, along with the other avatars, when Aang passed on the knowledge of energy bending to Korra and restored her bending, representing the newly established connection she had made with her spiritual self. After Unalaq had merged with Vaatu and proceeded to attack Raava, Setzo was present in the Avatar lineup that Korra envisioned. However, his connection to the latter was severed due to Unalaq's assault on and subsequent destruction of the Light Spirit. Yangchen. Yangchen was born and raised by air nuns in the Western Air Temple. She was plagued by the voices of avatars before her for as long as she could remember. At some point before she was 8, Yangchen began to periodically fall into extremely painful phases of fever and almost epileptic fits, initially rambling incoherently. The air nomad healers tried their best to help her but found no cause. Over time, however, her screaming became recognizable as names and even sentences. Abystegmola began to document the child's words, hoping that they might find some meaning in them. Occasionally, the young avatar also reenacted scenes from her past lives. One day, Yangchen began talking to Earth King Zhulei, who had been dead for 3 centuries, but who was recognizable to her caretakers. Taken together with the notes of the abbess, it became clear that all the individuals Yangchen had talked about were companions of past avatars. Her caretakers, most importantly Jetson, realized that reading out texts written by these individuals would ease the girl's pain. This was especially important to calm Yangchen down when she relived the personal losses and betrayals of ancient avatars, suffering even more than usual. As a result of constantly reliving the experiences of her past lives, Yangchen realized her avatarhood by the time she was 11. Though her fits of possession became less painful as time went on, the Air Nomad elders were troubled by the fact that these incidents kept happening. Jetsun, whom Yangchen regarded as an older sister, tried to figure out new ways to help her. Eventually, she acted as the young avatar's guide so that Yangchen could meditate into the spirit world. With the assistance of Abastagmola and the librarian Sering, the two made their first attempt at a meadow above the Western Air Temple. Using her latent avatar hood, Yangchen managed to do it in her first try. Thrilled at the beauty and otherworldliness of the spirit world, Yangchen felt for the first time that she might like being the avatar. She performed her first act of waterbending on a small island in the Mousy Sea, and like all avatars, mastered the elements in the avatar state in order to maintain world peace. Before she started traveling, her elder caretakers made Master Boma promise to watch the young avatar until she could be on her own. A week after Yangchen had mastered the 4 elements, she set out with Boma and her 2 winged lemurs, Pick and Pack, on her sky bison on her first official mission as the Avatar, to a shoreside city whose king had sent for her help. Upon her arrival, she was told by the king that the local fortune tellers had predicted a tragedy coming from the sea to befall the city that evening. Believing the fortune, Yangchen waited on a cliff overlooking the water. When past midnight an enormous spirit emerged from the water, she felt overwhelming grief emanating from the spirit and tried to make contact with him. He knocked her down, however, and the two engaged in battle, which would last through the night and leave the city in ruins. As dawn broke, Yangchen finally managed to convince the spirit to tell her who he was and what he wanted. She could not allow him to exact his revenge on the citizens for killing Lady Tianhai, however, so she struck a deal with the General Old Iron Spirit, one she promised to maintain for eternity in exchange for a truce with the humans. General Old Iron promised to never take up his armor against humanity so long as the land remained free of human civilization. In return, Yangchen constructed a statue in Tianhai's memory and established a ritual among her people to visit the site once a year to prove that humankind could preserve and protect nature. So long as the land remained sacred to the air nomads, no one would dare develop the area and risk Old Iron's wrath. In the following time, Yangchen struggled to earn the respect felt for Avatar Setzo. However, she had little reason to trust her counsel in an era when loyalty was bought rather than earned. At one point, she traveled to Bin-Ur in the Earth Kingdom on political business and had a chance encounter with an informant named Kavik, leading to a wary partnership. The city was ruled by corrupt Shang merchants who were resentful of the mercurial Earth King and his whims, and the Shangs sought to use a mysterious weapon of mass destruction that would place power squarely in their hands. Yangchen and Kavik sought to thwart their plans as their unlikely friendship deepened. Yangchen went on to face great dangers together with a team of companions. 2 of Yangchen's bending masters and friends died while defending her from enemies. Over time, she also became well-learned and studied many different philosophies, including the writings of gurus Lahima and Shokan. At some point, Yangchen met the leader of the 5th Nation pirate fleet and signed a treaty with him, according to which the Corsairs would leave the Earth Kingdom's southern coast in peace. She also made further pacts between humans and spirits, such as in the case of the Heartwalker of Yaoping Mountain and the Phoenix Eel spirits living under Mainka Island. Avatar Yangchen died in 345 BG and was reincarnated as Kuruk of the Northern Water Tribe in accordance with the Avatar cycle. Following her death, Yangchen became revered as a holy figure in the Earth Kingdom and among the air nomads. People in the Earth Kingdom would even pray to her for protection and luck. Wayside shrines were dedicated to her throughout the Earth Kingdom. The devotion to Yangchen was such that people even prayed to her when facing another avatar, such as Kyoshi. Her compassion toward others became a legend when she was remembered for this characteristic of hers. In remembrance of her intervention with General Old Iron, the air nomads continued to make yearly pilgrimages to the statue of Lady Tianhai, renaming the ritual Yangchen's Festival. The island on which Yangchen had first used waterbending became a holy site to the air nomads until it was accidentally destroyed by Avatar Kuruk. Over time, the air nomads made 2 statues of Yangchen, one in the Eastern Air Temple and one in the Western Air Temple. Yangchen's political decisions also had a long-lasting impact. Her devotion to her duty as the Avatar ushered in a prolonged period of peace as no threats of war occurred for an entire generation after her death. The 5th Nation pirates honored her treaty for 3 generations until it was broken by their commander Tulak shortly after Kuruk's death. Her political decisions were also analyzed by scholars who would write treatises on the subject. These were read by Yun, who was initially presumed to be Kuruk's successor. Contrary to popular belief, however, her effect on the world was not wholly positive. When humans and spirits came into conflict with each other, she often sided with the humans, trusting they would respect her end of the bargain to take care of the physical world. While some humans did respect the new treatises, as in the case of Tianhai's city, many others did not. When humans violated the new promises, many spirits turned dark. This led to an abundance of dark spirits in the lifetime of Kuruk. After her death, she regretted that she gave the 4 nations everything they wanted. She acknowledged that no one was entitled to their every desire, and in order to live in true balance, humans must know when not to take everything from the world and from each other. The ramification of her choices in favoring humans over the spirits led to a reincarnation's suffering, which weighed heavily on Yangchen in her afterlife. Kyoshi wished to contact Yangchen many times in her early life, though was not able to until she came to terms with her immediate predecessor, Kuruk. Yangchen first appeared to Kyoshi in a spring located in the forest near Yokoya. Initially, the Earth Avatar thought she was speaking to Kuruk, and then gasped in shock, believing she was seeing the ghost of her air nomad mother, Jasa. After she realized who Yangchen was, she explained the confusion, causing the compassionate airbender to meet a tearful Kyoshi with a gentle embrace. And she told Kyoshi that all would be right. Kyoshi raised that she had so many questions as Yangchen was the first avatar who could properly guide her. When Kyoshi explained her doubts about Kuruk hunting dark spirits, Yangchen explained that he was forced to take on the responsibility as a direct result of Yangchen's policies relating to spirits, and that every avatar makes mistakes. She sensed Kyoshi's disappointment, but her successor simply responded that she was confused. She advised Kyoshi that she must give up looking for an easy answer, as even if she spent 1,000 years talking to the past avatars, she would not know how to best guide the world. Before she dissipated, she asked Kyoshi to replace a clay turtle that she had broken, a traditional relic that identified the air avatars. In 100 AG, Yangchen was sought out by Aang in the spirit world, who was in a coma at the time. During their brief meeting, she discussed Aang's failure at protecting Ba Sing Se from Azula. Amid the young avatar's embarrassment, Yangchen convinced him not to feel guilty for his shortcomings, as previous avatars had also made mistakes and struggled to successfully perform their duties. Although she told Aang little about her personal experiences, she was empathetic toward his shame and sadness. Yangchen also imparted to Aang the reason the avatar takes human rebirth each time. In order to have a desire to protect humanity, the avatar must feel compassion toward humans, and the only way of doing so was living among them. If the avatar was instead an all-powerful immortal spirit living at the top of a mountain, he or she would not have anything in common with ordinary people. She acknowledged that the avatar must experience human life and emotions, such as sadness, anger, joy, and happiness, in order to learn how precious human life is and therefore understand the need to protect it. Thus, with every reincarnation, the spirit of the avatar comes closer to fully comprehending what it truly means to be human. At the end of the meeting, Yangchen told Aang that the spirit of the avatar had been healed, though his ability to use the avatar state was disrupted, and he would therefore need to rely on his friends, not past lives, for guidance. As Aang departed, Yangchen told the young avatar that the memory of his journey in the spirit world would be erased once he awoke from his coma. When on the lion turtle, Yangchen was the last of his past lives Aang summoned for advice on how to defeat Ozai without killing him, thinking a fellow air nomad would easily sympathize with his views and support a bloodless victory over the Fire Lord. Although Yangchen remarked the air nomad belief that all life was sacred, she reminded Aang that the avatar could never detach themselves and achieve spiritual enlightenment, as their sole duty was to the world. As such, she imparted him with the wisdom that selfless duty required him to sacrifice his own spiritual needs and do whatever it takes to protect the world, which left Aang deeply discouraged. In 102 AG, the day before Yangchen's festival was to be celebrated, Yangchen appeared as a mysterious hooded figure to Aang in Yu Dao and led him onto a balcony. She tried to speak to him, though Aang could not hear her voice. After she disappeared, he eventually concluded that she came to remind him to revive the celebration. When Team Avatar subsequently made their way into a town that was built upon a meadow sacred to the air nomads, she appeared to Aang once more, leading him to investigate the grounds of the Earth and Fire Refinery and discover a polluted river. Sometime later, she appeared a third time and imparted a vision on him of a monster destroying a settlement, leaving him to wonder whether it was a vision of the past or the future. Later that day, when Aang was saying a blessing before having the ceremonial meal of Yangchen's festival with the air acolytes, he crossed over into the spirit world, where he was able to fully connect with Yangchen. She explained to him that all of the avatars are connected to one another like a chain, so when he broke off his relationship with Roku, he also damaged his connection to all the avatars that preceded him. However, traditions like the ceremonial meal served as a temporary conduit for them to connect. Yangchen told him of her past dealings with General Old Iron, though before she could complete her story and tell Aang of the specifics of the deal she struck with the spirit, Aang's meditation was interrupted by another earthquake. Aang later repaired the connection with his past lives by recrafting the fire medallion on his meditation beads. After reconciling with Roku, Aang made his way down to Yangchen, whom he urged to finish her story. After she did, she confirmed that the metal that had been dug up was Old Iron's armor and warned Aang that his return was impending. As Yangchen lamented that her promise had been broken, Aang suggested that he could bury the armor once more and return the land to its natural state. She did not answer, instead telling Aang to return to his friends. Yangchen was among all the other avatars when Aang passed on the knowledge of energy bending to Korra and restored her bending. representing the newly established connection she had made to her spiritual self. While Unalaq was attacking Raava, Korra envisioned Yangchen among the Avatar lineup she had seen prior to regaining her bending. However, her connection to Korra was severed due to Unalaq's assault on and subsequent destruction of the Light Spirit. Kuruk. Kuruk was born at the Northern Water Tribe in 345 BG. The sages of the tribe determined that Kuruk was the Avatar through their nation's traditional procedure, and when the time came, they revealed this to Kuruk. He was given a glowing crystal by the sages and was astonished when he successfully managed to earthbend and raise the crystal in the air. His announcement as the Avatar was celebrated with a great feast in Agna Kela, attended by dignitaries from the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation. Although Kuruk excelled at earthbending, his form was initially considered improper. He was first taught by a wizened master from Ba Sing Se, who deemed his loose form a detriment, as he was not adopting the proper attitude of an earthbender. Kuruk struggled with why this was a detriment, as the elements were all connected. The only one who agreed with him on this front was a young man from the Ganjin tribe, Jianju. In spite of the boy's uptight personality, the two of them cemented a close friendship as soon as their first Pai Sho game concluded. Kuruk and Jianju suffered through their traditionalist masters lecturing the Avatar throughout his mastery of earth, fire, and air. He complied instead of fighting tradition, and even invented a new technique of creating a cushion of air under a heavy object so that it could be slid and moved over a floor with care. His good behavior was largely due to being allowed a sky bison at the end of his airbending training. Once, Kuruk and Jianju sneaked into the bison pen in the Southern Air Temple for a joyride, and were caught by Kelsang, who pinned them to the wall with a blast of air that rippled their cheeks for minutes on end. They were brought before the temple's abbot and Kuruk's masters and were disciplined for their lack of caution. Kelsang was assigned as a chaperone for their first trip, as well as a man of the Sinaka clan in the Fire Nation. However, the man got sick and sent a younger relative, Heiran, as a temporary replacement. As soon as Kuruk lay eyes on Heiran in the First Lord's harbor, he was determined to pull every string he could to make the assignment a permanent one. He resolved to make his feelings clear, though the young woman coldly responded that she was not interested in a relationship with the Avatar. Although once Kelsang and Jianju laughed at the brutal rejection, Heiran clarified that a romance would only be forbidden on duty. After mastering all bending arts, Kuruk intended to learn how to control the Avatar state. For this purpose, he and his 3 comrades traveled to a small, uninhabited island in the Mousie Sea, where Avatar Yangchen bent water for the first time in order to not endanger anyone. Despite these precautions, Kuruk almost killed Jianju, Kelsang, and Heiran, and destroyed the entire island when he successfully triggered the Avatar state for the first time. Afterward, the 4 started to travel the world, going on adventures. Although Kuruk had mastered all 4 elements, he surprised his companions by asking for more bending training, explaining that the Grand Masters of Pai Sho never stopped learning, and that constant challenge could keep their skills growing. The companions practiced at every stop of their journey, identifying and correcting each other's bad habits. After Kelsang confessed that he had visited the spirit world unintentionally, Kuruk chose for him to guide him there. They visited a meadow in Yaoping where Yangchen had practiced using the Avatar state and managed to successfully pass over to the spirit world. Finding himself in a swampland area, Kuruk was confronted by the Heartwalker of Yaoping. The spirit's long tail hoisted him into the air, and their forms were crushed together. Before Kuruk lost consciousness, he saw a reflection of Yaoping Town in the spirit world and deduced that the Heartwalker was attempting to attack the settlement. Kuruk awoke and took Gelsang's glider, rushing to the salt mines in the neighboring mountain that gave the observer the same view of Yaoping as could be seen in the spirit world. He visited the spirit and began to fight, bringing the Heartwalker down with a torrent of all 4 elements. Kuruk was discovered by his companions the following day, crawling through Yaoping and frothing at the mouth. The defeat of the spirit had cost him a portion of his own vitality. He attempted to tell his companions about the encounter but could not, instead choosing to make up a tale about a mischievous spirit. A doctor determined that there was nothing wrong with his body, but Kuruk had sunk into a deep depression. When a maid gave him distilled wine in defiance of the doctor's orders, the taste of alcohol began to cut through his chill, numbing the pain. The maid smiled at Kuruk, and desperate to feel something, he chose to sleep with her. When his companions later discovered the two, Kelsang did not judge him, Jianju did not care, but Heiran lost a great deal of respect for Kuruk in that instant. Kuruk's adventures with his friends continued until a second spirit attack came. Kuruk chose to face the matter alone, not wishing his friends to fall into the same depression he had after battling the spirit. A bad dream while visiting the Fire Nation showed him a rift in a sea note supplying water to Mainka Island. Kuruk swam down until he found the phoenix eel spirits stabbing them with stone and ice. When he came to the surface, he began to cry, and was found by Nyahitha of the Banti. The man explained that, after receiving a premonition, the tribe had sent him to aid the Avatar. Nyahitha took Kuruk to a campsite in the jungle, diagnosing his energy pathways with firebending. The Bonte man confirmed that destroying dark spirits was causing damage to his own spirit, and that even though he could repair what he could, each battle would take its toll on Kuruk, and he would certainly not be the longest-lived of the Avatars. He joked that Nyahitha made for a poor doctor and coughed up blood over the man's body. The toll on his body cemented Kuruk's decision not to tell his other companions and see them fall to danger and despair. By visiting the hidden library of the Bonte, Kuruk and Nyahitha determined that the spirits were trying to force their way through the newly created cracks in the boundary between the spirit and human worlds. While more attacks came, Kuruk stalked the spirit world, using his own abilities as a hunter to track down dark spirits. Each time he found a dark spirit, he tried to placate its anger at the cost of his own soul, but he was forced to kill the spirits of murderous intent. Neither Kuruk or Nyahitha told anyone of what they were doing. As the world went on, Kuruk began to sleep through meetings and drank more wine to dull his lingering pain, trusting that Jianzhu would work things out with the diplomats and officials. He spent his nights carousing, trying to feel as human as possible, a pursuit in which Nyahitha joined him. The hedonism was not a cure for the strain on his soul, but he still pursued it, and believed it to be a sign of his own weakness. As a result, Kuruk seemingly became a go-with-the-flow type of avatar, as the world's tranquility allowed him to step back from his responsibilities as the avatar and let the four nations resolve their own conflicts. Jianzhu later mused that Kuruk had always been late to events and seemingly took few things seriously. When he was not forced to fight dark spirits, Kuruk spent much of his days searching both the physical and spirit world for worthy opponents to challenge in bending contests, usually for no reason other than entertainment and pleasure to try to feel more human. Kuruk liked to show off his bending ability to others, especially beautiful women, in grand displays. Kuruk airbent tornadoes filled with lotus flowers for young air nomad nuns, would challenge random Fire Nation citizens to Agni Kais, and engaged in boulder lifting contests with earthbenders. His strength in sparring matches was considered legendary, and no bender was ever able to trump his abilities. He also had many, but usually brief, relationships with numerous women, earning a reputation as a heartbreaker. Nevertheless, he never got over his lost relationship with Heiran. After several adventures, Kuruk's group began to drift apart, and the friends split up in 316 BG. The Avatar resumed his travels and spent more time with Nyahitha, while his mental health continued to deteriorate amid stress and loneliness. Time passed in a blur, and Kuruk eventually received a letter from Jianzhu which admonished the Avatar for not attending Heiran's wedding. At that moment, Kuruk became absolutely stricken with grief over his lost love and anger over his own perceived failures. When he confronted a dark spirit the next time, Kuruk's pent-up rage caused him to annihilate the being with the full force of the Avatar state. Realizing this, he felt even more ashamed at having seemingly misused his powers. Overcome with grief, Kuruk crafted a love poem for Heiran, finally confessing his feelings for her. It was a desperate cry for help, an attempt to return to his youth when the future was still full of hope and he had a chance at a relationship with Heiran. Over the next day, Kuruk unexpectedly turned up at Kelsang's home, seeking his friend's advice on the poem. As he did not understand his friend's pain, the air nomad was horrified, thinking that the verses threatened Heiran's newly found happiness. Kelsang consequently forced the Avatar to destroy the love poem. Kuruk channeled his despair at research with Nyahitha, eventually concluding that the cracks in reality were being created by a single spirit. He focused on finding the origin, until he finally encountered Father Glowworm. Kuruk made the mistake of trading names with the spirit when he encountered it, cementing a curse on the Avatar and anyone else who learned of the malevolent spirit. Their fight nearly created a hole in the reality between realms. Father Glowworm was stronger than the other spirits, but Kuruk was too stubborn to lose. Kuruk managed to grievously wound Father Glowworm, but the spirit managed to escape. Although he did enough lasting damage to ensure the spirit would do no more damage for a generation, he had been marked in return, and neither would fully heal from the encounter. Never having even the slightest thought of settling down, Kuruk carried on with his hedonistic way of life until the day he met his true love. At the New Moon celebration, a festive meeting of the two water tribes, he met a woman named Umi from the Southern Water Tribe. Kuruk fell in love with her at first sight and presented Umi with a customary betrothal necklace shortly after their first meeting, which she accepted. The two designated their marriage to be at the Spirit Oasis. As they approached the altar on the night of their wedding, Umi fell into the oasis, pulled in by an unseen force. She had been dragged to the spirit world by Ko the Face Stealer to punish Kuruk for his past arrogance. Every year, on the anniversary of their wedding, Kuruk traveled to the spirit world in hopes of saving Umi, but failed on every occasion. His attempts made Ko hold a grudge against the Avatar. Kuruk died in 312 BG, aged just 33. On his deathbed, he gathered his closest friends around him, urging them to find the next avatar and do right by them. Following his death, and despite having been reincarnated, Kuruk's spirit continued to roam the spirit world, searching for his wife. After an encounter with one of his successors, Aang, he eventually found Ko and would have slain him, were it not for his realization that the spirit had stolen Umi's face and thus trapped her forever. He could not kill Ko without killing his wife in the process. Despite protecting the world from great dangers, Kuruk was widely believed to have failed as an avatar, as few were aware of his sacrifices. Following his demise, the world slowly descended into chaos. The Earth Kingdom was destabilized by the Yellowneck Uprising and large-scale banditry, while pirate fleets grew in numbers and became bolder in their attacks. The usual methods to identify the Avatar failed, resulting in a futile search by Kuruk's former teachers and friends for 7 years. Kuruk's true successor, Kyoshi, was not initially identified as such, and Yun was declared the next Avatar in 296 BG. The Northern Water Tribe and many of his friends struggled to explain how Kuruk had seemingly failed so much at his duties. Kuruk's sacrifices in containing the dark spirits reaped benefits, however, as very few spirit attacks occurred after his death. Father Glowworm became so weakened that it was eventually absorbed by Yun. Unfortunately, Kuruk's efforts meant that spirits who were not dark also wished to leave the physical world and return to the spirit world, leading to a loss of spiritual sights among the air nomads. His unique bending techniques survived him, as Jianzhu continued to use Kuruk's earthbending style and taught it to Yun. The air nomads also continued to use the airbending techniques which were developed by Kuruk. As adopted daughter of Kelsang and servant to Yun, who was initially believed to be Kuruk's successor, Kyoshi learned of him during her teenage years. She initially had a low opinion of him due to his irresponsible ways. Kyoshi first heard Kuruk's voice, though just faintly, during a battle with the Fifth Nation pirates. The former Avatar complimented his successor's actions, telling her that she had done well. At the time, Kyoshi did not yet know that she was the Avatar and was unsure about the voice's identity. Kuruk fully appeared to Kyoshi as a reflection in a pool of water when she was meditating at the Southern Air Temple a few weeks later. His first act was to plead for her help, though he dissipated shortly after. Over the next year, Kyoshi received garbled messages from Kuruk that soon passed. Kyoshi received a particularly painful vision as she flew over the destroyed island that Kuruk had ruined in the first time he entered the Avatar state. Kuruk's message was a painful experience for Kyoshi and caused her to fall off Yin-Yang into the cold seawater. Kuruk's hazy figure appeared in the water before Jinpa reached through Kuruk's body, dissolving it. Kyoshi managed to receive an extensive vision of Kuruk's life from his revelation as Avatar up to his first journey to the spirit world after she meditated in the hills around North Chungling while guided by Niyahitha. However, she believed that she had learned nothing useful in dealing with Yun or Father Glowworm. When Kyoshi left the Fire Nation, she plunged herself into the sea where Yangchen's island had once stood. While almost drowning in the seawater, Kyoshi managed to cross over to a beautiful green field in the spirit world. Kuruk told her that he could help guide her to Yun and Father Glowworm, but he needed her help to do so. Kyoshi asked where the spirits were, and Kuruk told her that they avoided him as he used to hunt spirits. Kyoshi grew disgusted upon learning about his fact and angrily told him that his name belonged in the gutter with hers. The spirit world responded to her emotional state, the ground cracking beneath her. She screamed at Kuruk, threatening to fall into an abyss, and Kuruk told her she had every right to hate him. At that moment, the crumbling paused as Kyoshi reminded herself of her obligation to the world, and to be more than the sum of her grievances. The spirit world reconstructed itself, and Kuruk motioned to touch Kyoshi. She received an extensive vision of his life after he first crossed over to the spirit world up to his battle with Father Glowworm. When she stepped away from Kuruk's memories, Kyoshi had a newfound respect for Kuruk. She asked about the rest of his memories, but he dourly told her that there was little else to see. Kyoshi expressed her gratitude for reaching him, but he showed her another area of the spirit world, a drained, dead swamp that had been formed out of Yun's anger. Kuruk told her that the spirits could not possess people's thoughts, causing Kyoshi to realize that Yun had been acting freely the entire time during his quest for vengeance. Kuruk empathized and expressed his desire for it to have been otherwise. Their meeting came to an end, but accessing Kuruk's memories allowed her to sense Yun's location, and reconciling with her past life allowed for her to waterbend a sliver of water to heal Ranji while in the Avatar state. Aang first learned about Kuruk while he was in the spirit world during the Siege of the North. Ko informed him that Aang had attempted to slay him in a previous life, though the spirit never specifically identified this man as Kuruk. Later, while Avatar Roku was teaching Aang about the Avatar state, Aang saw a brief vision of Kuruk performing enhanced waterbending. Aang finally learned Kuruk's name when he was in a coma after Azula's lightning attack in Ba Sing Se. When they met in the realm of Ko, Kuruk asked Aang if he had seen a beautiful woman with long brown hair. Aang responded by inquiring about Kuruk's dilemma, at which point Kuruk proceeded to tell him his story as the Avatar. After the tale, Aang realized that during his encounter with Ko, one of the spirit's faces was that of the woman Kuruk had described. Heartened by the knowledge of his wife's whereabouts, Kuruk set off to track down Ko once again. However, as Avatar Yangchen had predicted, Aang retained no memory of this encounter. Later, Avatar Aang meditated, contacting Kuruk so as to ask how Fire Lord Ozai could be defeated without killing him. Kuruk told Aang to actively shape both his destiny and that of the world, as the former had failed to do so in his own life, having gone with the flow. It was Kuruk's own arrogance and inaction that had cost him his beloved wife, Umi, to Ko. Aang took this to mean that Kuruk, like the other avatars, believed it was necessary to use lethal force in order to protect the world. However, Kuruk's answer was much more open to interpretation, since actively shaping your destiny could have various meanings, including Aang's decision to strip Ozai of his bending. While Aang was trying to establish contact with Avatar Yangchen for a solution to the situation with General Old Iron, Kuruk appeared in a vision which represented Aang's restored connection to his past lives after restoring his link with Roku. Kuruk stood alongside all the other avatars when Aang passed on the knowledge of energy bending to Korra and restored her bending, representing the newly established connection she had made to her spiritual self. After Korra lost her memory, Kuruk appeared before her, taking over from Avatar Kyoshi, and informed the young Avatar that she would have to return to the beginning to find Raava and reconnect with her Avatar spirit. While Unalaq was attacking Raava, Korra envisioned Kuruk as part of the Avatar lineup, which she had seen prior to regaining her bending. However, his connection to Korra was severed due to Unalaq's assault on and subsequent destruction of the Light Spirit. Kyoshi. Kyoshi was born in the year 312 BG somewhere in the Earth Kingdom. Her exact birthplace was unknown even to her. At the time of her birth, the country was destabilized by the Yellowneck Uprising and marauding bandit groups known as the Dao Phi. One of the most powerful crime networks, the Flying Opera Company, was led by Kyoshi's parents, Jasa and Hark. Her parenthood was unusual, as her mother Jasa was a renegade air nomad nun, whereas her father Hark descended from a distinguished but impoverished line of Earth Kingdom actors. Following Kyoshi's birth, her parents opted to lay low and mostly refrained from participating in criminal activities. Along with their daughter, they traveled all across the Earth Kingdom in a wagon, never staying in one place for a long time. When Kyoshi was 5 or 6, however, her parents decided to leave her in the care of a villager at Yokoya Port, an impoverished community of farmers and fishers located on a peninsula at the Whaletail Strait in the southwestern Earth Kingdom. They left her a chest with Jace's signature metal fans, as well as a journal that contained information about the Dao Phi and their customs. When her parents had departed, the villager immediately reneged on the deal, casting Kyoshi out onto the streets. As they were mostly poor themselves, the people of Yokoya had little sympathy for her and would have left her to die of hunger. Homeless and reduced to starvation, Kyoshi survived by eating garbage, making her even more of an outcast among the Yokoyans. Kyoshi later blamed her parents for her misfortune and came to hate them as well as all criminals in general. Nevertheless, she grew extraordinarily tall and was already taller than many teenagers at age 7. By chance, Yokoya was visited by Jianzhu and Kelsang in 305 BG. The two masters had been traveling the Earth Kingdom for 7 years to find the Avatar. They presented the children of Yokoya with a test that included toys that had belonged to past air nomad avatars, but all failed. Kyoshi spied on the event, and Kelsang invited her to pick the toys despite Jianzhu's objection that she was probably too old to be the Avatar. Though mistrustful, she took a clay turtle that had belonged to a past Avatar. When Kelsang told her that she could take 3 more toys to confirm whether she was the Avatar, Kyoshi believed this to be a lie or trick, not used to kindness and inherently regarding promises of fortune as dangerous. As a result, the young girl fled with the clay turtle instead of partaking in the test. The two masters let her go and went on to falsely identify an Earth Kingdom boy named Yoon as the Avatar. Having realized that none of the Yokoyans were helping Kyoshi, Kelsang sought out her hiding place in the village and took her into his care. Used to being mistreated, the young girl was initially reluctant to trust the air nomad monk, but when she understood that he was honest, Kyoshi was overwhelmed by the air nomad's kindness and came to see him as her adoptive father. Kelsang always provided for Kyoshi when he was in Yokoya, but he often had to leave the village for long periods of time, during which he provided money to various farming families to look after her until he returned. Once he returned to find she had lost weight and had not been taken care of properly. He promised Kyoshi that he would never leave her for such a long period of time again, which is when he got Jianzhu to grant her a position of work in the Avatar Mansion that was being built to accommodate Yoon's trainers and entourage. While the construction of the Avatar Mansion was still ongoing, Kyoshi met Ranji, a firebender who had been appointed Yoon's bodyguard, and who soon started to regularly yell at Kyoshi and order her around. After a few weeks, Kyoshi realized that the firebender expressed some emotions in a particular way. Yelling at people meant she liked them. The two subsequently became good friends. As a result of Kyoshi's desire for organization and cleanliness, the staff eventually decided that her talents would be best put to use cleaning up after Yoon as his servant, as he tended to leave quite a mess wherever he went. She would also help out in the kitchen and sort through gifts sent to the Avatar from time to time. Enjoying her life at the mansion, Kyoshi fully adopted it as her home, though she always remained somewhat apart from the rest of the staff due to her background and friendship with Ranji, who treated the other servants with open disdain. Kyoshi cared for the other staff members and had a good working relationship with several of them. Despite her greatly improved livelihood and overall situation, Kyoshi continued to face occasional harassment by local youngsters, most prominently by Aoma, the daughter of Yoyoka's village captain, who along with her companions was jealous of Kyoshi's comparably better life as well as her proximity to the Avatar, despite being an orphan and outsider, while they had to toil on their parents' fields and fishing boats. Despite this, Kyoshi preferred to adhere to neutral Jing and endure the bullying rather than strike back, although she was physically strong enough to do so. She also held almost no grudges against the Yokoyans who ill-treated her as a child and teenager. Once, when Ranji plotted to aid her in getting revenge on Aoma, Kyoshi even cautioned against it. Her rejection of violence included the use of her own earthbending abilities. She was only able to bend very large pieces of earth without any precision. Regarding these abilities as useless for her servant job, Kyoshi rejected Kelsang's urgings to get training and generally refrained from using her bending at all. Over time, Yoon, Ranji, and Kyoshi grew increasingly close, the presumed Avatar and the servant girl in particular spending much time together. One of Kyoshi's duties would be to help Yoon sort through the many gifts sent to him by officials and sages from around the Earth Kingdom. One night, while sorting through them, Yoon placed his head in her lap as the two joked around. The two of them nearly kissed, but stopped themselves before it happened, believing that a relationship would be impossible due to their different social stations and duties. Neither of them mentioned this incident again, but whenever Yoon saw fire lilies, he would look back and forth between them and Kyoshi until she smiled and blushed. Kyoshi's life drastically changed in 296 BG. Kelsang began to suspect that she might be the actual Avatar, although Kyoshi considered the assumption ridiculous. The monk initially agreed not to voice his assumptions publicly. Kyoshi consequently joined Yoon's team as he ventured to an iceberg near the South Pole, where the treaty was supposed to be signed with a pirate people known as the Fifth Nation. For this occasion, Jianzhu provided Kyoshi with an impressive green armored kimono that later became part of her iconic look. In the course of the tense 2-day-long negotiations with the pirates, Kyoshi grew closer to Ranji but remained otherwise a mere onlooker. When the Fifth Nation leader Tagaka revealed that the meeting was a trap to capture the Avatar, however, Yoon was only saved thanks to Kyoshi's intervention. Using a combination of raw power in the Avatar state, she destroyed much of the Fifth Nation fleet in an amazing feat of earthbending. This event caused Kelsang to reveal his belief in Kyoshi's avatarhood to others. With the identity of the Avatar being called into question, Jianzhu tried to learn the truth by presenting Kyoshi and Yoon to an evil spirit known as the Father Glowworm in the southeastern Earth Kingdom. The creature identified Kyoshi as the true Avatar. To her shock and horror, Jianzhu then left Yoon to the spirit's wrath while taking Kyoshi to safety. Shortly after, Kelsang unexpectedly arrived and tried to rescue her, only to be murdered by Jianzhu. Overcome with emotions, Kyoshi triggered the Avatar state and was able to flee back to the Avatar Mansion. There, she revealed the events to Ranji, who vowed to protect her from then on. The two consequently escaped into the Inner Earth Kingdom on Kelsang's flying bison, Peng Peng. The two tracked down the flying opera company, joining them to be safe from Jianzhu. Kyoshi quickly deduced that one gang member, Lao Ge, was an infamous assassin. He agreed to become her teacher in spirituality and assassination. Despite hiding their true identities, she and Ranji also gradually formed bonds with the other gang members, Karima, Wang, and Lek. Traveling with the criminals, Kyoshi ended up in the Daofei town of Hujiang, where the Flying Opera Company was forced to agree to assist a more powerful crime network, the Autumn Bloom Society led by Mach. While staying at Hujiang, Kyoshi realized that she was in love with Ranji. To her relief, the firebender shared her feelings. After fleeing Hujiang due to an attack by a Shirshu sent by Jianzhu, Kyoshi was forced to reveal her true identity to the rest of the gang. To her pleasant surprise, the criminals refused to abandon her, considering her a comrade and friend. Kyoshi then earnestly began her training, being taught firebending by Ranji, waterbending by Kurima, and earthbending by Wang as well as Lek. Lao Ge also continued to share his knowledge, including his self-proclaimed method to achieve immortality. After several weeks of preparation, the Flying Opera Company traveled to Zygon Village. There, the group was supposed to help the Autumn Bloom in rescuing a prisoner from the dungeons of the corrupt governor, Te Sihung. To test her mettle, Lao Ge secretly enlisted Kyoshi to also murder Te. The operation succeeded in freeing the prisoner, although Kyoshi spared Te's life after threatening him into becoming a better official. To the Flying Opera Company's shock, however, the freed prisoner turned out to be Shu Ping'an, a mass-murdering and deranged rebel leader. Shu promptly declared the Yellownecks restored and prepared to restart his destructive insurgency. Realizing that she could not allow Shu to walk free, Kyoshi challenged him to a Lei Tai duel. The duel almost resulted in Kyoshi's death, as Shu turned out to be a powerful lightning bender. However, Kyoshi eventually entered the Avatar state and killed Shu. The Yellownecks consequently scattered, while Kyoshi's friends nursed her back to health. However, Jianzhu had finally located her and ambushed the Flying Opera Company, kidnapping Ranji and inadvertently causing Lek's death. Vowing revenge, Kyoshi confronted Jianzhu at Qinchao Village. After a tense conversation and Kyoshi's refusal to become the sage's pupil, the two started to duel. They proved to be evenly matched until Yun unexpectedly reappeared, ruthlessly killing Jianzhu before leaving without another word. Kyoshi then fled the town, leaving its inhabitants, the Qin clan, furious at the destruction caused by the duel with Jianzhu. Kyoshi subsequently reunited with the Lao Ge, Kurima, and Wang, who had rescued Ranji in the meantime. The group decided to split up, with Kyoshi venturing to the Southern Air Temple in order to safely reveal her identity as the Avatar to the public. After revealing herself as the Avatar to the Air Nomads, Kuruk appeared to Kyoshi in a vision, pleading for her help. Kyoshi did not fully connect with him, however, leaving the content of his request vague. She also learned that Jianzhu had left all his lands and wealth to her in his testament. Over the course of the next months, Kyoshi began to assume her Avatar duties. Before she left the Southern Air Temple, Jinpa was assigned to the Avatar as her personal secretary by the Council of Elders. He subsequently became her confidant and friend, although their working relationship was often strained due to Kyoshi's unwillingness to do what was expected of her, namely to aid and work with the four nations' elites, despite many of them being corrupt as well as self-serving. Kyoshi found it difficult to be an approachable or diplomatic Avatar and failed to hide her disgust at the Earth Kingdom's rampant corruption. As she could not solve issues by talking, Kyoshi tended to resort to force and manipulation to carry out justice. She could do so as her abilities as a bender and strategist grew steadily, also thanks due to her studying the writings of her old nemesis Jianzhu. Feeling unable to properly influence the Earth Kingdom's elites, Kyoshi eventually launched a one-person crusade against the Earth Kingdom's worst Dao Phi groups, destroying several. She also searched for Yun but found no trace of him. Overall, her demeanor and opinions alienated many members of the country's elite, while the common people came to fear her. To Kyoshi's own unease, she increasingly employed tactics similar to those of Jianzhu, and began to feel deeply conflicted about her way to do things as the Avatar. By 295 BG, Kyoshi was in Ba Sing Se, where she defeated Mach and the Triad of the Golden Wing, as well as rooting out the corruption of the city's peace officers. She decided to pause her work in the Earth Kingdom when Jinpa notified her that Ranji and Heiran had returned to the Fire Nation. As she journeyed to the capital, she began to confide in Jinpa about her recurring visions of Kuruk, after an intense pain caused her to fall into the Mao-Si Sea. Kyoshi arrived in the Fire Nation, where she was formally greeted by Chancellor Dairin, and used the opportunity to grow close with Ranji again. Kyoshi's appearance at the festival seemed to prove a catalyst for the political tensions in the unstable Fire Nation after she confused Che-Jin for his half-brother Zoryu, the rightful Fire Lord. Although Heiran helped Kyoshi smooth over tensions in the palace, the event was plunged into further chaos with the shocking appearance of Yun, who held the attendees hostage by burying half of their bodies in the floor with his earthbending. Yun managed to assassinate Liu Beifong, as well as killing Dairin and injuring his guards when they tried to confront him. As the earthbender managed to flee the scene, Kyoshi was left to deal with the political implications of the evening, as Che-Jin's faction and the Saowang clan would use it as a sign to prove the weakness of a Fire Lord whose reign had been plagued with bad luck. Kyoshi and her allies came to the conclusion that Yun was likely possessed from his experience with Father Glowworm. Heiran advised that they seek out Niahitha, an old ally of Kuruk and herself. Shortly before they left for North Chungling, Heiran ritualistically cut her topknot to demonstrate her lost honor, and made Kyoshi promise to allow her to sacrifice herself for Yoon. When they arrived, Nihahitha told Kyoshi that he did not know what the spirit had done to Yoon, but promised that he would help her commune with Kuruk. The group also bore witness to the escalating tensions between the clans in the Fire Nation, giving them a sense of urgency to resolve the conflict before the nation descended into civil war. That evening, Kyoshi and Nihahitha reached a bluff in the hills where Kuruk had once meditated, and she experienced a vision of Kuruk mastering the elements, although the memories did not provide her any help for what she should do with Yoon. As they looked down on the city, the pair were shocked to find a large message supporting Chaejin as the Fire Lord, which caused the rival clans to start descending into a brawl in the village square. Although Kyoshi tried to intervene and beg for peace, she began to realize that the battle was proving to be a distraction and returned to Heiran's lodgings just as Yoon was ready to stab Heiran through the throat. Although Heiran managed to badly burn Yoon, he still escaped, and Kyoshi chose to have the headmistress brought to her doctor, Atuat, instead of leaving to follow after him. As Heiran healed, Kyoshi found that Ranji was now furious with her after discovering Kyoshi's promise to sacrifice Heiran, though she soon showed that she still truly loved and cared for Kyoshi. Heiran and Kyoshi then noted that the fight in the square would be a pretense for war. Kyoshi deduced that Yoon was working with the Sawan, as she confirmed that the town's crops that spelled out the message had been poisoned with salt, which was now owned by Lady Huazo of that clan. Kyoshi then made a plan to force a confession from Huazo, and came to the docks with Atuat, where she apprehended the noblewoman before she was due to depart Suhan Island, although the woman agreed with her terms, believing that the Avatar was making a huge mistake. Kyoshi did not inform Ranji of her plans and instead lightly pushed her down in the ground before she left so that her lover could not come after her and stop her plans. Jinpa and Kyoshi flew Huazo to an Avatar-owned safe house on Capital Island before taking off and informing Zoryu of the situation. Although the Fire Lord was shocked, he gave her his permission to kidnap Chaejin. When she flew back to the safe house with Chaejin, she bent away the foundations of the property and intimidated the pair into revealing Yoon's location. When they refused to answer, she threatened to drop both of them into the sea. After Kuruk's voice reminded her that going this far was not who she was, she realized that both of them were truly innocent and let the pair go free. When Kyoshi returned to the palace, she bore witness to an assembly in the Fire Lord's private theater, where a double of Yoon confessed to conspiring with the Sawan clan, ruining the honor of the Fire Lord's rival clan and causing an immediate purge of the Sawan to break out across the nation. In a private conversation with the Fire Lord, she pointed out that the ruse would be exposed if the real Yoon showed up, and the Fire Lord agreed, stating that he had bought the Avatar more time to find the real Yoon. In return for apprehending the real Yoon, Kyoshi demanded that the Sawan and the false Yoon should be spared from death. Before dismissing the Avatar, Zoryu advised her to accept the truth that he was driven by revenge for his stolen Avatarhood. Kyoshi then departed the capital on a small royal pleasure craft, Sulan's Smile, ordering the crew to take her to the ruins of Yangchen's island in the Mousy Sea. Although she almost drowned in the seawater, Kyoshi managed to cross over to the spirit world where she had an emotional meeting with Kuruk. She received an extensive vision of his life, and realized that his own life had been shortened by his quest to hunt down dark spirits. Kuruk also informed her that the spirits could not possess humans, and that Yoon had been acting out of his own accord the entire time during his quest for vengeance. In the physical world, she was dragged out of the seawater by Junhoo and his crew, saving her life. After spending a month learning advanced healing arts from Atuat, Kyoshi made her way to Yokoya, meeting Yoon in the Avatar Mansion. After excusing Mui, Kyoshi confronted Yoon, telling him that she had to bring him to justice for the sake of the world. Yoon refused to be locked up by Kyoshi and started the fight by bending up a stone pillar between the pair. Kyoshi managed to rip up the dining room in the fight, but Yoon escaped the area and hid himself from Kyoshi throughout the rest of the estate. Kyoshi was caught off guard when Yoon managed to liquefy the stone floor without heat to trap and encase Kyoshi, but then she revealed that the rest of the Flying Opera Company had come with her. Wang bent her out of the trap while Karima attacked Yoon, while Ranji sent a violent blast of fire in Yoon's direction. After Yoon hurled stone spears to fend off a potential rescue by Jinpa, he broke Karima and Wang's legs by creating pitfalls when they tried to sneak up on him. After crudely using blood to complete their signature makeup, Kyoshi and Ranji used fire to destroy Yoon's earth barriers, though Yoon tunneled down and stabbed Ranji with an earthen spike. Kyoshi attempted to apologize to Yoon when he began to chastise her, but he made use of the opportunity to freeze Yoon's heart and lungs when she could get close to him, while immediately turning back to Ranji and using the Avatar state to heal her grievous wounds. After Atuat came to the peninsula to give more specialist care to Kyoshi's wounded friends, she buried Yoon in Yokoya and held a small funeral with Ranji, where they promised to stay beside one another forever. At that moment, a fox guided Kyoshi to a forest spring, where she met with Yangchen for the first time. The previous Avatar explained her own failings to Kyoshi and that every Avatar had to make the right decisions for themselves. After the meetings, the fox guided Kyoshi back to her friends and later became her animal guide. Following her battle with Yun, she sent Lao Ge to intimidate Zoryu into keeping his promise to spare the Sawan and the false Yun. Despite the turmoil in her personal life, Avatar Kyoshi remained steadfast in her mission to see the four nations rise above the conflicts plaguing them. She was not a popular Avatar at the time, as her closest allies were Dao Fei, and she sometimes fumbled in diplomatic situations without hesitating to resort to violence. Kyoshi returned to Ba Sing Se soon after the Camellia Peony War, and over the next 2 years she helped to establish a task force which swiftly dealt with the most dangerous Dao Fei and violent criminals in the lower ring of Ba Sing Se. Kyoshi received support from Ambassador Qin of the Fire Nation in this endeavor, and the ambassador convinced the Earth King Yi Ming to officially adopt the task force. Kyoshi was needed elsewhere and left Ranji and Ba Sing Se to keep an eye on things, while the task force was given over to the control of the Earth King. Soon after Kyoshi left, the Earth King began to use the task force to threaten criminals who stood in the way of his power. When Ambassador Qin's children were kidnapped, Ranji saw the turmoil growing in the city and worried that things would turn violent, and left the city to inform Kyoshi of the situation. During this time, Kyoshi was contacted by Wan Shitong, a spirit who kept a vast library of knowledge. The spirit's knowledge seekers informed the Avatar that a Dao Fei group known as the Paper Knives had stolen a tome of great value and importance. Kyoshi did not fully understand what was in the book, and she had no time to rescue a book when she was dealing with people in their lives. She ultimately set the task to recover the book to her friends and allies, who turned to their contacts. Eventually, Kyoshi mastered the Avatar state, becoming feared and effective while restoring order in the world. She managed to maintain a tense equilibrium between the four nations. Kyoshi also did not hide her bisexuality, and attempted to effect greater tolerance for non-heterosexual people in the notoriously conservative Earth Kingdom. Nevertheless, these efforts had little impact. When she visited the ports of her adopted homeland peninsula, she constantly had to put carousing men in their place after they caused trouble to the female villagers. Eventually, she decided to train the women in defensive combat so that they could defend themselves. These women later formed the first band of the Kyoshi warriors. During Kyoshi's life, the 46th Earth King's rule was unpopular among the populace of the Earth Kingdom. Using this to his advantage, a warlord named Qin launched a war to conquer the continent. He was successful until he reached the peninsula where Kyoshi lived, finding the Avatar waiting for him. Standing before his army, Qin demanded their immediate surrender, and Kyoshi warned him that she would not sit idly by as he took her home. When he refused to back down and assumed a challenging earthbending stance, she unfurled one of her fans and fired a powerful air blast at him, leaving the humiliated warlord down to his underwear. Kyoshi subsequently entered the Avatar state and separated the peninsula from the mainland by using a combination of earthbending, lava bending, and airbending, forming Kyoshi Island and thereby protecting her homeland from subsequent threats. An indignant Qin was left standing on the edge of the newly formed cliff, which began to crumble beneath his feet, and as he refused to budge from his unstable position, caused him to fall into the sea and drown, ending his campaign and ushering the world into a great era of peace. Though Kyoshi was only tangentially responsible for Qin's death, she herself saw little difference between causing the circumstances of his death and actually striking him down, and would claim to have personally killed him for generations afterward. Because of Kyoshi's act, the people of Qin Village on the mainland founded Avatar Day to vilify Kyoshi and all the succeeding avatars for the death of their leader. The people of Kyoshi Island, meanwhile, founded Kyoshi Day on the same day as Avatar Day to honor her creation of the island and the restoration of peace to their village. They also erected a large totem, topped with a statue of Kyoshi in her memory. Sometime after her final confrontation with Qin, Kyoshi was summoned to Ba Sing Se upon the request of the Earth King, since his unpopular rule had led to a peasant uprising in the city. By the time Kyoshi reached the city, the peasants had already destroyed everything that represented the old government, including ancient and valuable artifacts that held historical and cultural importance. The king demanded that she stop the uprising by whatever means necessary. However, Kyoshi staunchly refused, stating that it would not be right for her to do so. Incensed by her defiance, the Earth King ordered his guards to arrest her. However, the king was left cowering on his throne as Kyoshi dispatched his guards in a single move and admonished him in turn for daring to defy the Avatar. Held at the point of Kyoshi's war fan, the quivering monarch agreed to a compromise. The Earth King would give the peasants a voice in his ruling, while Kyoshi in turn agreed to protect Ba Sing Se's cultural heritage from further desecration. She proceeded to train an elite platoon of earthbenders called the Dai Li, though their subsequent corruption weighed heavily on Kyoshi in her afterlife. In her later life, the Earth Kingdom entered an age of peace and prosperity. Kyoshi helped implement various bureaucratic policies to aid the poorest of the kingdom and strengthen ties between the 55 states of the Earth Kingdom. The constitution that she drafted with the 46th Earth King was upheld by her for nearly 200 years until her death. The Earth Sages that had once been against her began to seek redemption after their order embarrassed and diminished, and they began to regain the people's trust they had lost, embracing their true role as wise advisors and academics. Many people in the Earth Kingdom looked to Kyoshi and idolized her, such as Princess Guo-shun of Omashu, who later became the city's queen. Kyoshi died in the year 82 BG at the age of 230, making her the oldest confirmed avatar and human in history. Though some other individuals were rumored to have lived even longer, it is possible that Kyoshi learned the secret of immortality from her spiritual teacher, Lao Ge. Her daughter Coco succeeded her as the leader of Kyoshi Island, and she reincarnated as the Fire Nation noble Roku. Following her death, Kyoshi became a legend and was considered one of the greatest avatars. The devotion to her memory was strongest in her adopted homeland, as wooden statues of Avatar Kyoshi were erected in every village in Kyoshi Island, and a shrine dedicated to her was erected in Suki's village, displaying the late Avatar's outfit and war fans. Over time, some villages on Kyoshi Island began to believe that they should limit contact with the outside world to a minimum, interpreting Kyoshi's splitting off of the island as a mandate for isolation. However, other communities on the island continued to trade with the Earth Kingdom. Serving the world as Avatar for over 2 centuries, Kyoshi led the 4 nations into an unprecedented time of peace and prosperity. Soon after her death, the world was on the brink of a technological renaissance and industrial revolution, which was made possible by the phenomenon of international collaboration fostered by business and academia to solve the most pressing issues of their day, with technological institutes springing up across the world and scholars, inventors, and educators directly forging ties with one another in the name of progress. However, materials for these new technologies were scarce, and complex political circumstances and the ambitious leadership of many world leaders after Kyoshi's death meant that the nations began to compete with one another over resources. The peace she had maintained throughout the Earth Kingdom was maintained for a time by the Earth Sages after her death, who strove to uphold her policies in the Constitution and continued to lecture on how they could benefit the poorest of society. However, the death of Kyoshi allowed Earth King Jailun to begin manipulating the Constitution. The Earth Sages were confident in speaking against the king's corruption, but this led to a mass purge orchestrated by the king and the Dai Li, known as the Night of Silent Sages. The peace that Kyoshi had maintained in her homeland was thus entirely undone by the time that her successor, Avatar Roku, was a young man, with the Earth Kingdom suffering once more under a greedy and exceedingly calculating Earth King. The Kyoshi Medal of Freedom, regarded as the highest recognition conferred upon exemplary military personnel in the Earth Kingdom, and Kyoshi Bridge in Republic City both share her name. In the centuries after her death, several details of Kyoshi's life faded out of public memory. Most notably, it became a point of pride for Kyoshi Islanders to attribute her birthplace to the locality, and one of her successors, Avatar Aang, also falsely believed that she had been born in the area that later became Kyoshi Island. The Avatar's relationship with Ranji also faded out of public knowledge in some villages on the island. Kyoshi's attraction to both men and women was known to some people centuries after her death, including Kaya, who relayed the Avatar's preferences, as well as her failure to establish lasting change and tolerance towards such relationships, in her home nation to Avatar Korra and her girlfriend Asami Sato. During his trip to Kyoshi Island, Aang observed the statue erected in her honor. She thereafter appeared in a vision as the most recent Earth Kingdom Avatar when Avatar Roku was explaining the nature of the Avatar state to Aang. Kyoshi later manifested herself through Aang to testify in a trial proving the Avatar's innocence, though she confessed to killing Chin while doing so. When helping Aang to reconnect with her and his other predecessors after being shot down by Azula's lightning, she apologized to him for the wrongful murder charge in Chin Village and explained that after Chin's demise, she helped the world live in balance. She accomplished a lot of good but also made mistakes, one of which was the creation of the Dai Li, as she could have never foreseen how corrupt and cruel they would become. Kyoshi imparted Aang with wisdom that all of their actions have consequences, even if they do not manifest in their own lifetime, and sent him to find her predecessor. Before the arrival of Sozin's comet, Aang summoned Kyoshi's spirit, seeking advice on how to defeat Phoenix King Ozai without killing him. Kyoshi reminded him that her forceful ending of Chin the Conqueror's war for dominance brought a great era of peace. Aang pointed out that she was not directly responsible for Chin's death, arguing that it was a result of his own arrogance. Kyoshi replied that she saw no difference in this, and told him that she would have done anything to stop Chin. She left Aang, telling him that only justice would bring peace. Aang regretted consulting Kyoshi on this complex matter after hearing her advice. While Aang was trying to establish contact with Avatar Yangchen for a solution to the situation with General Old Iron, Kyoshi appeared in a vision which represented Aang's restored connection to his past lives after restoring his link with Roku. Despite his displeasure with her advice to kill Ozai, Aang nonetheless greeted her cheerfully before moving on. Kyoshi, alongside many other past avatars, appeared to Korra after she had lost her bending to Amon. This appearance was representative of Korra's ability to establish a connection with her spiritual side and for the purpose of having her bending restored. After Korra had lost her memory, Kyoshi appeared before her, taking over from Avatar Roku, and informed the young Avatar that if she did not reconnect with her Avatar spirit, darkness would engulf the world and she would die, ending the era of the Avatar. While Unalaq was attacking Raava, Korra envisioned Kyoshi as part of the Avatar lineup, which she had seen prior to regaining her bending. However, the latter's connection to Korra was severed due to Unalaq's assault on and subsequent destruction of the Light Spirit. When Suki despaired in her cell in the Boiling Rock, after being released from solitary confinement and Bayu's treachery, a vision of Kyoshi appeared before her. Kyoshi told her that her friends had not abandoned her and that she was not alone. In disbelief, Suki asked how she could know and reached out to the Avatar, but Kyoshi quickly vanished. Roku. Roku was born to a noble family from the Fire Nation. Roku never much wanted for anything in life and was a kind, determined, and friendly child. Throughout his childhood, the world had enjoyed an unprecedentedly long time of peace due to the long life of the previous Avatar Kyoshi, and was on the brink of an industrial revolution due to the unprecedented collaboration fostered by business and academia to solve the world's most pressing issues, and scholars, educators, and innovators directly forged connections with one another in the name of progress. He spent much of his childhood visiting the palace, and Roku and Prince Sozin were best friends. They spent a lot of time together and practiced their firebending. They were so close that Sozin was able to immediately recognize Roku's crush on Ta Min, encouraging him to speak with her. They also shared the same birthday, which they celebrated together. During a party celebrating his and Sozin's 16th birthday, Roku was informed by the Fire Sages that he was the Avatar. Before Roku left the Fire Nation to master the other three elements, Sozin came by to talk to him, and was informed by Roku that the sages had told him not to bring anything with him on his travels, as the Avatar required no worldly possessions on his journey. After learning this, Sozin gave him the headpiece worn by the Crown Prince of the Fire Nation, hoping that he was at least allowed to have that. Roku took the headpiece gratefully and wore it for the rest of his life. After learning of his identity as the Avatar, Roku began his journey to train under masters of the other three bending arts. Following the cycle, he needed to learn airbending first, so he traveled to the Southern Air Temple. While there, Roku became good friends with a young air nomad named Gyatso, who would, in his elder years, become the guardian, mentor, and friend to Avatar Aang. During one of the airbending lessons, which involved the students taking off with their gliders, Roku showed off by performing a loop. When Gyatso tried to upstage him by air surfing but fell, Roku came to the aid of his friend, though their combined weight proved too much for Roku to control, and they crashed into the other students standing safely on the ground. After training for several years, Roku mastered the art of airbending and traveled to the Northern Water Tribe to learn waterbending from Takukak. At first, Takukak refused to train the Avatar, believing that any Fire Nation subject would hold a higher loyalty to the Fire Lord than the people of the Four Nations, as he had been betrayed by his best friend spying for the Fire Nation as a young man. However, Roku refused to seek another instructor and eventually convinced Takukak of his devotion by living in the north for several years. When he started to train to learn waterbending in earnest, the task was particularly difficult for Roku, as water is the natural opposite of fire. However, years of training enabled him to duel his master and stand his ground. During one of these confrontations, Roku took the brunt of a water blow and ended up in the ocean, but popped back up to stand on an ice platform and swept Takukak away with a tall wave of water, crashing into the pinnacle of the chief's palace a good distance away. After Roku mastered waterbending, he often worked together with Takukak in private, but they maintained their distance in public to ensure that the waterbending master was not accused of being the Avatar's puppet during his diplomatic missions. Moving on, Roku traveled to the Earth Kingdom to learn earthbending from a master named Sud, with whom he developed a great friendship. During one of their training sessions, they raced each other atop slabs of earth to the top of a hill. Although Sud was in the lead most of the time, Roku managed to best him to the top with time to spare to prepare tea for both of them, much to Sud's surprise. Through his travels, Roku saw how unique each nation was and how their peace was held together by fragile threads. He learned what it was like for people living in poverty and realized what his privilege afforded him in his youth. For Roku, traveling the nations had not been just about learning the elements, but also about understanding the world and his duties as the Avatar. Soon after Roku set out on his journey, the world began to change, with events such as Earth King Jailun's purge of the sages taking place, and the Earth Kingdom government began to grow greedy and corrupt. Changes at the hands of ambitious world leaders when Roku was still young meant that the world was a much more complicated place by the time he had mastered the four elements than it had been after Kyoshi's death. Between 54 and 58 BG, the Four Nations Summit and Technological Symposium took place in Haribulkan, and Avatar Roku sent his waterbending master, Takukak, to ensure everything went smoothly. Both the Avatar and the Waterbender foresaw a possible political incident occurring at the summit, and it was important that the delegates kept the peace with one another so the summit did not turn into an international incident. Takukak did not want to out himself as Roku's spy, so he tasked a group of heroes to help him during the event. During 55 BG, after mastering earthbending, Roku spent 5 months in retreat at the Crescent Island Fire Temple, one of the Avatar temples, attempting to master the Avatar state under the guidance of Fire Sage Kaja. Growing impatient after failing to master it with meditation, he tried using the winter solstice sun to force himself into the Avatar state. Despite his success, he became trapped under its influence and was unable to control its powers, resulting in the destruction of the upper half of the Fire Temple and the eruption of the nearby volcano. Kaja eventually managed to free Roku from the state by aligning the Avatar's eyes with the winter solstice sun once more, halting the destruction of the temple. In payment for his near destruction of the Fire Sage's temple, Roku rebuilt parts of the temple and carved new underground passages out of the island's magma. He also personally provided aid to people living on the neighboring islands, as the region was suffering from seismic instability as a consequence, with earthquakes damaging many homes across the eastern Fire Islands. Following the incident, Roku became more patient with his training and completely mastered the Avatar state afterward. War threatened to break out between the Northern Water Tribe and Earth Kingdom after a tsunami hit the northern coast of the Earth Kingdom state of Chenbao. The Earth Kingdom blamed waterbenders for sending the tsunami, while the Northern Water Tribe blamed earthbenders for creating an underwater earthquake. But the truth was that it was simply a horrible natural disaster. Supported by the air nomads of the Northern Air Temple, Roku intervened before the conflict could escalate, and both sides backed down, though their navies remained in the contested waters. Roku requested Air Nomad elders to form a covert group of airbenders whose job centered around quickly and quietly dealing with issues for the Avatar without question. This delegation was led by Sharab, who took his role very seriously. In the following years, Roku faced rising worldwide tensions due to cultural changes and the growing influence of nationalist expansionist ideas. As the world continued to develop new technologies, nations began to compete with each other over raw materials and other resources, which were needed for such innovations, leading to numerous small-scale conflicts and diplomatic incidents. Dark spirits also began to stir in the polar regions, which spiritually inclined tribespeople believed was the result of nations abusing natural resources and laying claim to sacred land, and the Fire Nation beginning to hunt dragons. Meanwhile, the world was affected by disasters such as floods in the southern Earth Kingdom. Roku worked hard to maintain the balance between the nations and did all that he could to negotiate the potentially volatile situations of his day. With most of the nations becoming increasingly selfish and aggressive, the air nomads were Roku's main allies, and the temples gladly came to Roku's aid when he called upon them, despite the protests of the breakaway sect known as the Guiding Wind, who claimed that Roku was overstepping his avatar by asking the air nomads to be involved in worldly politics. After his mastery of the Avatar state, Roku returned to the Fire Nation capital, having become a fully realized Avatar. He reunited with Sozin, who had since been crowned as Fire Lord, greeting each other with a hug. A few months later, Roku married his childhood sweetheart, Tamin, and had Sozin take position of his best man during the ceremony. At the wedding, Sozin asked to speak with Roku in private and informed his close friend that he had thought hard about the state of the world. He told Roku that he firmly believed the Fire Nation had entered a period of great prosperity, and promised to Roku that together the pair could spread this wealth to the world by expanding the empire. Roku was horrified by this proposition, telling Sozin that the four nations were to be kept separate, and advised the Fire Lord never to bring the subject forth in future conversations. At some point in his life, Roku found a dragon Fang, when he was a baby not yet hatched from his egg, and adopted him as his animal guide and constant companion during his life as the Avatar. He eventually settled down and began living out his life with Tamin, with whom he later had a daughter, Rina. 17 years after Roku's wedding, he discovered that Sozin had proceeded with his plans and set up colonies within the Earth Kingdom. Infuriated at this act of war, Roku confronted Sozin. Blasting open the doors to the throne room inside the Fire Nation royal palace, he lambasted his old friend and ordered him to cease his aggressive expansion. When Sozin reported that Roku's loyalty lay with the Fire Lord and the nation's progress, deeming him a traitor if he did so otherwise, Roku warned the Fire Lord not to challenge him. As he turned to leave, Sozin attacked him from behind, but Roku easily dodged the attack and used his earthbending to reappear behind Sozin, giving him the opportunity to strike him with an air blast. Suspending Sozin in the air with an earth pillar by the collar of his robes, Roku entered the Avatar state and destroyed the throne room and part of the palace with a massive gust of air. He spared Sozin's life for the sake of their past friendship and left him still hanging above the ground, though not before warning him never to move forward with his plans again, as it would otherwise result in his permanent end. However, the Avatar allowed the first Fire Nation colonists to remain at their new homes in the Earth Kingdom. 25 years later, Roku's home island was consumed in a violent volcanic eruption so massive that even Fire Lord Sozin could see and feel it from his palace 100 miles away. Initially, he managed to give time for the other inhabitants, including his wife, to escape the island by forming an air sphere around him. Through the use of his bending abilities, Roku attempted to contain the volcanic destruction, although it was delayed by continuous spitting of lava from the volcano's mouth, using earthbending to create trenches to divert the lava safely to the sea, and using airbending to solidify the lava and blow away the poisonous gases from the geysers formed underneath, until he used the Avatar state to bend lava to the other side. He eventually lost hope, though, when the secondary volcano close by also erupted. At that moment, however, Sozin arrived on his dragon and offered his assistance to the Avatar. The two used their bending to try to contain the lava flow, with Roku saving Sozin from a nasty fall using earthbending, but the poisonous gases eventually forced them to flee the mountainside. On their way down, Roku warned Sozin not to breathe the gas, and used his airbending to protect them before succumbing to a gas geyser himself. His vision blurring, Roku pleaded for help. Instead, Sozin realized that without Roku in his way, his plans of conquest would come into fruition, therefore leaving on his dragon, leaving behind a shocked Roku to die. Aghast by his former friend's decision and reason to leave him for dead, Roku ultimately realized that his death was inevitable. Right before the pyroclastic flow engulfed him, Fang curled up with his master and the two died together. Like all the other avatars before him, a statue of Roku was built in the sanctuary of the Southern Air Temple, next to Kyoshi's. Another statue of him was also built in the Fire Temple on Crescent Island, where he had once trained. Roku was reincarnated into Aang, an air nomad who would later become the sole survivor of the air nomad genocide. The Fire Sages, who were once loyal to Roku, eventually lost faith that the Avatar would return and fell under the control of the Fire Lord, gradually turning away from their true purpose of serving the Avatar. A century after Roku's death, during a winter solstice, Aang was able to communicate with him by visiting a sanctuary of the temple that Roku had inhabited 112 years prior. There, Roku informed Aang of the impending return of Sozin's comet, and described Fire Lord Ozai's plan to harness the comet's energy and gain victory in the war. He entrusted the young Avatar with the task of mastering the four elements and defeating the Fire Lord before the comet's arrival, before the summer's end. Roku also helped Aang defeat a group of firebenders along with their leader, Admiral Zhao, who waited outside the sanctuary to capture the young airbender by manifesting himself in Aang's place. Seizing control of the fire bent at him and sent it back in a powerful wave that knocked back all opposition and melted the chains of those captured. Furious over the treachery of the Fire Sages, except Xiu, he used lava bending to awaken the dormant volcano directly underneath the temple, destroying the structure before the solstice ended, during which he disappeared after the completion of his task. Roku aided Aang several times after this, appearing to Zhang to persuade him to teach his successor firebending after the deserter refused to teach the art. During the Siege of the North, he offered critical wisdom in the ways of the spirit world, informing Aang of how he could save the Moon Spirit and defeat the invading Fire Navy. Later, after Aang entered the Avatar state without control after losing Katara due to General Fong, he revealed to Aang the nature of the Avatar state, including the fact that, if he was ever killed in such a state, the Avatar cycle would be broken and cease to exist. Thus, he acted as somewhat of a mentor and spiritual guide for Aang. Roku appeared to Aang in the spirit world after the air nomad was struck by lightning from Azula during the coup of Ba Sing Se. although the Avatar was revived by Katara, who used spirit water to heal his spirit. He offered encouragement and shared his own experience in mastering the Avatar state. Shortly after, Roku showed himself to the young airbender once more, when the latter was feeling disheartened over his perceived failure in Ba Sing Se. Roku, however, blamed himself for the entire tragedy, saying he should have foreseen the war and taken steps to prevent it. He proceeded to tell Aang that he believed it was his destiny to save the world and redeem him. Shortly afterward, Roku appeared to Aang in a dream and said that the young Avatar should visit his homeland, where he would learn about the origins of the war. Aang entered the spirit world, and Roku guided Aang through his life, from his friendship with Sozin to his eventual death. Aang also communicated with Roku immediately prior to the arrival of Sozin's comet. He told Roku that he felt insecure about killing Phoenix King Ozai, as he was taught by the air nomads to respect all life. While understanding Aang's discomfort, Roku insisted that Aang must kill Ozai in order to save the world. He told Aang that it was his reluctance to end Sozin's life that initially started the 100-Year War, and that Aang must not make the same mistake by showing mercy to Fire Lord Ozai. A year after the 100-Year War, Aang again called on Roku regarding the behavior of Fire Lord Zuko, Roku's great-grandson. Aang had promised to Zuko that he would end his life if he ever developed ridiculous plans just as his father had. The young Fire Lord appeared to be in such a mental state when he withdrew his support of the Harmony Restoration movement. Roku again told Aang he needed to be decisive, as the former again expressed his regret for not ending Fire Lord Sozin's life when he had the chance. When discord erupted between the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom concerning the city of Yudao, Aang sought Roku's advice, who advocated him to uphold his promise with Zuko and kill him to keep the world in balance. Aang later arrived at Yudao to separate the two battling armies, but at the last moment chose to spare Zuko's life. A few days later, at Iroh's tea shop in Ba Sing Se, Roku berated Aang for his mercy in allowing Zuko to live and his failure to keep the four nations separate. Aang retorted that Roku's doctrine no longer applied in the post-war era. Stating that Roku could not teach him anymore in this era, Aang burned his fire amulet into ash, breaking the connection to his past life, a tear rolling down his cheek as he did so. This later proved to have great repercussions when Yangchen explained to Aang that by severing his connection with Roku, he damaged his connection with all the avatars before him as well, leaving Aang unable to contact his other past lives at will. With Aang needing to get in contact with Yangchen due to General Old Iron's approach, he re-established his connection with Roku by recrafting the fire medallion for his meditation beads from stone with his earthbending. Roku appeared before his apologetic successor and offered him a hug. As they embraced, he told the young Avatar that his past lives could only advise him from their own perspectives, and that he had to find balance, not just between human and spirit, but also the past and present. He pointed Aang to his most recent past lives leading up to Yangchen, and added that he remember this advice as he looked for a solution to his dilemma. Roku appeared along with Aang, Kuruk, Yangchen, Kyoshi, and all previous avatars before Korra when her bending was removed by Amon. He and every other avatar present entered the avatar state to restore her bending, and disappeared when this task was completed. He also appeared when Korra was suffering from amnesia, taking over from Avatar Aang, and told her that in order to recover her identity she needed to reconnect with her avatar spirit. While Unalaq was attacking Raava, Korra envisioned Roku among the avatar lineup she had seen prior to regaining her bending. However, his connection to Korra was severed due to Unalaq's assault on and subsequent destruction of the light spirit. Aang. Aang was born to 2 air nomads in 12 BG. After selecting the Avatar relics from among thousands of toys, thereby inadvertently confirming his identity as the Avatar, he was taken away by the monks of the Southern Air Temple, who kept his position a secret from him. As an air nomad, Aang traveled extensively around the world. During his childhood, Aang was housed, raised, and educated at the Southern Air Temple, under the guardianship of Monk Gyatso, who served as his father figure, counselor, and tutor. After some time, he and several other young air nomad boys were taken to the Eastern Air Temple, where they each chose a sky bison as their lifelong companion. Aang approached his soon-to-be sky bison Appa and offered him an apple, which Appa accepted, thus marking the start of their deep and lifelong friendship. Aang was always able to excel at any new bending moves he learned. At the age of 6, he was a better airbender than children twice his age, and by the age of 10, Aang had proven himself to be better than his own teachers. He earned airbending tattoos and the status of an airbending master by the age of 12 for exhibiting prodigious talent with his native element and with his invention of the air scooter, making him the youngest airbending master in air nomad history. In his childhood, Aang also visited the other air temples, as evidenced by his obvious familiarity with the Western Air Temple, as well as cities in the Earth Kingdom such as Omashu, where he developed a lasting friendship with the good-natured but eccentric Bumi. He bonded closely with children in the Fire Nation like Kuzan, with whom he went searching for a dragon in the mountains and saved a dragon egg from poachers. Due to the signs of a possible war approaching, Aang was told about his status as the Avatar at the age of 12, 4 years earlier than the traditional age of 16. Aang felt burdened by his status as the other children refused to play with him anymore, and he came to spend more time practicing airbending with the monks. Monk Gyatso was the only one who shared an understanding of Aang's burden, having been good friends with Avatar Roku, Aang's past life, and tried to help ease Aang through the transition from childhood to adulthood by providing Aang with balance through fun during the upheaval in his life. However, Aang later discovered that he would be sent to the Eastern Air Temple in order to complete his airbending training far away from Monk Gyatso, whom the other monks thought was too soft on him. Afraid and confused, the young airbender ran away with his flying bison, Appa, though they became caught in a storm shortly after, which caused them to crash into the water. Aang saved himself and Appa from drowning by semi-consciously entering the Avatar state and freezing them both in a sphere of ice through a combination of airbending and waterbending. The Avatar state kept him alive, albeit not fully conscious, in the iceberg for about 100 years while the war raged on. 100 years later, Aang was found and freed from the iceberg by siblings Katara and Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe. He quickly befriended them and almost immediately attracted the attention of Prince Zuko, who sought to capture him on the command of his father, Fire Lord Ozai. A newly formed Team Avatar set out to find a waterbending master who could teach Katara and Aang, evading Zuko's attempts to capture them on their journey to the North Pole. While helping rid Sinlin village of Heibai, a spirit that was destroying their village, Aang crossed over to the spirit world where he met Fang, the animal guide of his predecessor, Avatar Roku. He was instructed to visit the Avatar Temple on Crescent Island during the winter solstice so he could talk with Avatar Roku. Despite a confrontation with most of the Fire Sages whose loyalty had turned from the Avatar to the Fire Lord, Aang managed to speak with Roku, who warned him about the impending arrival of Sozin's Comet, which would grant the Fire Nation enough power to win the war. Roku urged Aang to master the 3 remaining elements before summer's end when the comet was due to arrive, or no one would ever be able to restore balance to the world. When Aang was later captured by Admiral Zhao, Zuko came to his aid under the identity of the Blue Spirit, freeing the former so that he could capture the Avatar himself. Aang, Sokka, and Katara continued their travels to the Northern Water Tribe while developing a tighter bond, as Aang began to develop a crush for Katara. Upon the group's arrival at the Northern Water Tribe, Aang was displeased to learn that the waterbending master Pakku would not teach Katara due to the law barring women from learning combative waterbending, and was instead instructed to heal. However, she was able to change Pakku's mind, and they both began to learn from him. The period of calm was brief, as Zhao commanded an attack on the Northern Water Tribe with a large fleet of ships. At Princess Yue's suggestion, Aang decided to seek the guidance of the Ocean and Moon Spirits, patrons of the Northern Water Tribe. Aang learned through a spirit named Ko that the spirits existed in the mortal world, but his physical self had been captured by Zuko while he was in the spirit world. Aang's friends managed to rescue him, but not before Zhao arrived at the spirit oasis and killed the Moon Spirit, who was the source of power for waterbenders. Determined not to fail the Water Tribe, Aang merged with the Ocean Spirit and proceeded to annihilate the Fire Nation ships, winning the battle and forcing them to retreat. Aang and his friends left the north on a ship with Pakku and several others before flying to an Earth Kingdom base, from where they were to be escorted to Omashu in order for Aang to learn earthbending from King Bumi. The trio decided to travel alone as the general commanding the fortress tried to force Aang into the Avatar state, causing chaos and destruction. Upon arriving at Omashu, they learned that the city had fallen to the Fire Nation. Seeking to save the king, Aang and his friends evacuated citizens from the city in order to aid the Omashu resistance. But in the process, the governor's son Tom Tom followed them out. Team Avatar was sent a messenger hawk, reporting that the governor would trade the king for his son, but Princess Azula reneged on the deal, leading to a skirmish between the Avatar and the princess's allies. While he managed to find Bumi, the king told Aang that he would not leave Omashu and encouraged him to find a master who embodied the principles of neutral Jing. Before leaving Omashu on this quest, the team returned Tom Tom. While in the city of Gaoling, they heard about and attended a tournament that supposedly featured the best earthbenders in the world, hoping to find an earthbending teacher for Aang. At the end of the tournament, they witnessed the final fight between one of the popular contestants and the current champion, a blind girl. During the match, Aang realized the girl was the same one he had received a vision of while lost in the foggy swamp, and noticed her technique of waiting and listening before attacking, easily defeating her opponent. The ringmaster offered a sack of gold pieces to anyone who dared to face the blind bandit. Aang accepted the challenge in order to talk to the girl, but she ignored him after he caught her off guard by deflecting her attack with airbending. The group learned that the girl belonged to the Beifong family and visited their estate, posing as a formal visit by the Avatar. However, he learned that the Earthbender, a girl named Toph, was hiding her true abilities from her family. When she and Aang were kidnapped, Toph managed to fight off all of the attackers, revealing her skill to her parents, and ran away from home in order to join Aang's group. Due to Earth being the elemental opposite of air, Aang struggled to learn earthbending, but within the first day of training he managed to stand his ground and successfully earthbend. Soon after, Team Avatar was separated during a Fire Nation ambush. As they were searching for Katara, Aang, Toph, and Sokka captured a Fire Nation soldier. Aang was left disturbed by this encounter as the young man frantically believed the air nomads to be evil. Team Avatar was soon reunited with the aid of Jiang's pirates. While taking a brief vacation to the Misty Palms Oasis, the group was led to Wan Shitong's library in the middle of the Siwang Desert, and learned valuable information on a solar eclipse that would leave the firebenders powerless. After emerging from the library, they discovered that they had lost Appa, who had been captured and sold by desert tribesmen. After meeting the kidnappers and learning of Appa's fate, an enraged Aang entered the Avatar state and destroyed the tribe's sand sailors. In spite of Appa's absence, the group aimed to travel to Ba Sing Se and inform the Earth King in order to plan an invasion of the Fire Nation. After finding their way out of the desert and crossing the Serpent's Pass, the group discovered a giant Fire Nation drill trying to penetrate the outer wall of Ba Sing Se. General Sung was reluctant at first to accept the group's help, but after witnessing the quick defeat of his Terra team at the hands of Ty Lee and Mei, he gladly accepted the Avatar's assistance. In a joint effort, the group managed to defeat Azula's team and destroy the drill. Upon reaching Ba Sing Se, Aang discovered that the city was the site of a conspiracy. True power did not lie with the Earth King, but with the Grand Secretariat Long Feng, who controlled the Dai Li, Ba Sing Se's secret police. The group learned of and infiltrated Long Feng's secret base in Lake Laogai, believing that he was holding Appa captive. After reuniting with the Sky Bison, they stormed the palace and informed Earth King Kui of Long Feng's betrayal. After convincing the king to arrest Long Feng and plan for an invasion on the day of the eclipse, the king's men searched Long Feng's office and found a message for Aang from Guru Patik that had been tied to Appa's horn. The message was a request for Aang to meet the guru at the Eastern Air Temple and learn to control the Avatar state. After journeying to the temple, Patik helped Aang open all of his chakras but one, the thought chakra, as he refused to let go of his connection to Katara after receiving a vision of her in danger. Aang reunited with Sokka and Toph on the journey back to the city and learned that Azula, Mei, and Ty Lee had infiltrated the city. After reuniting with Katara in the Crystal Catacombs, the pair began to fight both Zuko and Katara before the arrival of the Dai Li, who had turned to the side of the Fire Nation princess. Aang successfully entered the Avatar state, but was struck with a lightning bolt fired by Azula. The severe attack rendered his 7th chakra impossible to reopen and mortally wounded him while he was in the Avatar state, severing the connection of the Avatar spirit to the world and threatening the end of the Avatar cycle. Katara caught Aang while he fell to the ground, being able to escape thanks to Iroh's unexpected intervention. While escaping the city on Appa, Katara used water from the Spirit Oasis to revive him, restoring the Avatar spirit in turn, but he still remained grievously injured. For several weeks, Aang remained unconscious as he recovered from his injury. Aang awoke in the spirit world, where he underwent a long journey to reconnect with the 4 most recent incarnations in order to heal the Avatar spirit. When Aang awoke, he had no memory of his time in the spirit world, finding himself aboard a Fire Nation vessel and sporting hair, leading him to believe he had been captured, though he soon learned that the ship was commandeered by Team Avatar and their allies. Upon reaching the Fire Nation, the team prepared for the invasion on the day of the eclipse and disguised themselves as civilians. However, the team soon encountered a mysterious assassin that they dubbed Combustion Man, who tracked them down across the Fire Nation. On the day of the eclipse, Aang, Sokka, and Toph searched for Fire Lord Ozai in an underground bunker beneath the capital, but were kept at bay by Azula for the entire duration of the eclipse. Realizing that the day had been lost, they retreated to the Western Air Temple with their youngest allies. After arriving at the temple, the team was confronted by Zuko, who revealed that he wished to join their group. They initially rejected the prince, but after helping them defeat Combustion Man, Aang accepted Zuko as his firebending teacher. When they discovered that Zuko had lost touch with his inner fire due to his defection, Zuko and Aang sought out the Sun Warriors to learn the original source of firebending. After undergoing a trial from the dragons Ran and Shaw, Zuko and Aang were shown a new, hopeful side to firebending, which allowed the pair to greatly improve at the art. When Azula attacked the Western Air Temple following the rescue of Hakoda and Suki from the boiling rock, Aang and his allies were forced to flee once again. While Aang and his friends believed they could delay confronting the Fire Lord until after Sozin's Comet, as Ba Sing Se had already fallen, they realized that they had to battle the Fire Nation imminently when Zuko revealed his father's plan to annihilate the Earth Kingdom. Due to his air nomad belief in the sanctity of all life, Aang felt a strong anxiety about the concept of killing Ozai. When he left for an island off the shore of Ember Island, he met a lion turtle who taught him the art of energy bending. Armed with this knowledge, Aang went on to battle the Fire Lord in Wulong Forest, where a sharp rock pressing against his wound allowed him to enter the Avatar state once more. Though Aang was able to overpower the Fire Lord, he decided to spare Ozai's life, and used his newfound abilities to strip the Fire Lord of his bending. With the war now over, Aang attended Zuko's coronation, with the pair vowing to bring peace to the world. In search of restoring balance to the world, Team Avatar met with Earth King Kui and Ba Sing Se after Zuko's coronation and initiated the Harmony Restoration movement to remove the Fire Nation colonies from the Earth Kingdom. Soon after, Aang and Katara began a romantic relationship with a passionate kiss at the Jasmine Dragon. Team Avatar split up after the 100-Year War, and Aang devoted his time to restoring peace and order in the world. He had helped to repatriate many Fire Nation colonists. After 1 year, however, Zuko unexpectedly withdrew his support for the decolonization efforts. Disturbed, Aang and Katara traveled to the colony of Yudao. There, the Fire Lord and Avatar could not agree on a course of action, as Zuko regarded the oldest colonies as prosperous communities which had the right to exist, while Aang saw them as a continued threat to the balance between the four nations. Regardless, Aang and Katara pledged to find a peaceful solution, deciding to address Earth King Kui to this end. In Ba Sing Se, Aang was surprised and happy to discover the official Avatar Aang fan club, a group that had devoted itself to learning the ways of the air nomads. In contrast, the meeting with Kui went poorly, as the king decided to remove the colonies by force. Aang and Katara hurried back to Yudao to convince the locals to leave before a new war could ignite. Faced with obstination from the colonists as well as Earth Kingdom nationalists, he struggled to find a peaceful solution until the chaotic battle for Yudao erupted. Fearing that he would have to kill Zuko to prevent another war, Aang eventually concluded that it was no longer possible to keep the nations apart, and that the Fire Lord was right. To this end, the Avatar stopped the battle and convinced Kui to allow the old colonies to stay, albeit as self-governing polities. He also transformed the official Avatar Aang fan club into the first air acolytes to revive air nomad culture. After solving the Yudao crisis, Aang, Katara, and Sokka decided to help Zuko in his search for his long-lost mother, Ursa. Doing so, they were forced to work with Azula, who had crucial information on Ursa's whereabouts. After a tense encounter with a wolf spirit, the group arrived in the remote village of Hira. There, they stayed at the home of two friendly actors, Norin and Noriko, but lost track of Zuko's mother. However, the group learned that Ursa's ex-boyfriend Ikem had disappeared in the nearby Forgetful Valley. At this deeply spiritual forested area, the Avatar and his comrades met Raava and Misu, Water Tribe siblings who were seeking the aid of a powerful spirit known as the Mother of Faces. Aang offered his help, crossed over into the spirit world, and convinced the ancient spirit to grant them one wish. Team Avatar decided to spend the spirit's goodwill to help Raava and Misu. However, Azula interjected and took the wish for herself, causing the Mother of Faces to reveal that she had helped Ikem and Ursa to start a new life by granting them new faces, those of Norin and Noriko, while also wiping Ursa's memories. Azula promptly took off, followed by Zuko and Sokka, as Aang and Katara attempted to convince the Mother of Faces to grant a second wish to help Raava and Misu. A fight ensued as the Mother felt that humans were disrespectful and sent her spirit followers to attack them. While fending off the spirits, Aang accidentally blew off Rafa's mask, revealing that his face had been stolen by Ko, the son of the Mother of Faces. Revealing that an Avatar had once spared Ko, Aang managed to convince her to grant Raava a new face. Soon after, the spirit also restored Ursa's face and memories. Aang and his friends consequently accompanied Zuko, Ursa, Norin, and their daughter Ki back to the Fire Nation capital. Team Avatar then attended the remaining talks on Yudao's future, during which Aang encountered Avatar Yangchen's spirit but was unable to hear her. This meeting inspired him to revive Yangchen's festival. In the process, Team Avatar and the Air Acolytes discovered that the Earth and Fire Refinery and a small settlement had been built on formerly sacred air nomad lands. Aang opposed this development, causing tensions with Toph, who advocated change. Despite the disruption caused by the factory, the Avatar and the Air Acolytes continued to try to celebrate Yangchen's festival. While doing so, a ceremonial meal acted as a conduit that allowed Aang to finally connect with Yangchen. However, an earthquake interrupted their conversation. The Avatar rushed to the Earth and Fire refinery, where he learned that Katara, Toph, and several others were trapped in a mine under the factory. Aang was able to save the trapped group with the help of Toph's students. Afterward, the Avatar reconnected with Yangchen and finally learned that Yangchen's festival had been set up to placate the spirit, General Old Iron, who had wanted to avenge the alleged murder of his spirit friend Lady Tian Hai by humans. The factory's construction had roused his anger once again. When General Old Iron subsequently attacked, Aang tried to negotiate until the spirit moved to kill Toph and her students. The air nomad then deeply wounded the spirit, causing General Old Iron to retreat. Aang regretted this development, feeling that General Old Iron might be right that humans and spirits were unable to coexist. However, his hope was restored when Lady Tian Hai reappeared and revealed that she had not truly died and also always loved humanity, as well as its progressive ways. The Avatar consequently decided to reform Yangchen's festival into the Spirit's Friendship Festival, something that preserved the air nomad traditions while also adapting to the new times. After solving the crisis at the Earth and Fire refinery, Aang traveled to the Fire Nation to help Zuko, who faced alleged dark spirit attacks. The Avatar learned that several children had disappeared while political extremists under Okano were mobilizing opposition against the Fire Lord. Seeking a reason for the spirit's anger, Aang, Zuko, Mei, and Kalo visited Dragonbone catacombs where otherwise forgotten knowledge on the Fire Nation's past was stored. At the crypt of the first Fire Lord, the air nomad contacted a Kamirakage spirit who informed the group that their kind had not returned to haunt the Fire Nation since ancient times. Accordingly, Aang reasoned that the kidnappers were human imposters. The next night, the fake Kamirakage kidnapped Zuko's sister Ki. Aang and his friends were unable to stop them, but learned that the imposters were led by Azula. The Avatar consequently helped to locate and rescue the missing children, although the Kamirakage imposters escaped. Aang subsequently traveled to the South Pole to spend some time with Sokka and Katara. While there, the Avatar had to deal with Southern Water Tribe nationalists under Galak, who intended to overthrow Katara's father Hakoda as head chieftain of the South. After helping to defeat a first nationalist attack, Aang attended an international meeting organized by Hakoda. Galak and his allies used the opportunity to strike again, but Aang and Katara were able to prevent them from kidnapping Hakoda. Regardless, the nationalists captured Earth King Kwai, leading to a tense prison exchange at the Bridge of No Return. Fighting quickly erupted and the nationalists were defeated. Aang saved Hakoda and Melina from falling to their deaths during these clashes. Shortly afterward, Aang and his friends ventured to the Earth and Fire refinery, discovering that a city named Cranefish Town had emerged around it. The Avatar was asked by Lao Bei Fong to help solve disputes between benders and non-benders at the settlement. When several non-bender-owned factories, including the Earth and Fire refinery, were sabotaged, Team Avatar decided to investigate. Aang and his friends discovered that Councilwoman Li Ling was organizing a bender supremacist movement, and captured her after infiltrating her secret rally. However, Aang was consequently faced with a dilemma as Toph urged him to take away Li Ling's bending to put an end to her movement, a fate considered by the conspirator as worse than death. Before he could decide, Li Ling escaped and started an armed uprising. The Avatar helped put down the insurgency and ultimately decided against removing the supremacist's bending, having concluded that this would not solve a conflict that was ultimately fueled by societal problems, distrust, and ideology. Aang and Katara consequently decided to stay in Cranefish Town, regarding it as a special place and wanting to help it develop into a better community. After the 100-Year War and the tensions of the Harmony Restoration Movement conflict, Aang managed to maintain peace. Together with Fire Lord Zuko and the rest of their friends, he transformed all of the former Fire Nation colonies into the United Republic of Nations. Cranefish Town, renamed Republic City, became the new state's capital and home to people from all nations. Aang worked closely with Zuko to allow Republic City to grow into a prosperous and safe environment, and had to deal with a growing number of bending criminals from the city's early days. In his efforts to revive the air nomads' culture, Aang scoured the ruins of the air temples for documents. He also attempted to maintain his people's cuisine, reconstructing old recipes based on his memories and badly damaged texts he found in the temples. This task was made more difficult by the fact that several special vegetables and fruits grown by the air nomads had gone extinct, forcing him to use ingredients from the other nations. Later on, Aang spearheaded the restoration of the 4 ancient air temples and constructed a 5th air temple near the heart of Republic City called Air Temple Island, where he housed a herd of surviving flying bison, along with a new type of winged lemur, the ring-tailed winged lemur, both of which he had found sometime after the war. Sometime during this period, Aang married Katara, and they had 3 children. Bumi, a non-bender who gained the ability to airbend in 171 AG, Kaya, a waterbender, and Tenzin, an airbender. When Tenzin turned 5, Aang began to collect a series of stories and mementos from his life for his youngest son to read following his death. Despite the peace the world was experiencing, family problems plagued the Avatar. Due to Aang's second responsibility of preserving air nomad culture, he spent more time and traveled more extensively with Tenzin, his only airbending child, so as to instill him with air nomad traditions. This made the elder siblings feel somewhat distant from their father. Despite this, Kya was still comfortable enough to reveal her sexual orientation to him, being completely acceptable in air nomad culture. Aang was naturally supportive of her. In 128 AG, the city was suffering from a high rate of crime due to a notorious crime boss named Yangchen. The fact that he was a master bloodbender, yet managed to stay out of the law's reach for a long time, caused Aang to find it necessary to assist the chief of police, Toph Beifong at the time, in his arrest in order to bring him to justice. Aang, Toph, and her metal-bending officers apprehended the crime lord at Kwang's cuisine. The criminal did not resist, and despite Aang saying that they knew he was a bloodbender, Yangchen claimed that he would beat the charges again. After attending his arrest, Aang was present at Yangchen's trial and sat behind the defendant in the gallery, where Yangchen was convicted of his crimes. However, before the sentence could be carried out, Yangchen used his powers to subdue everyone in the courtroom, leaving them unconscious. Aang was capable of holding out the longest, but he lost consciousness as well after Yangchen used his skill to levitate the Avatar in the air and throw him against the stairs leading up to the court's platform. However, employing the Avatar state, Aang regained his senses, allowing him to pursue the criminal. He effectively halted Yangchen's getaway by severing his mount from the carriage he was perched upon with an air swipe. Hovering around on an enhanced air scooter, Aang was subdued a second time by Yangchen's bloodbending, who now fully intended to kill him. Entering the Avatar state, however, allowed Aang to break free of Yangchen's grip, and he swiftly captured Yangchen in an earth shell before utilizing energy bending to permanently remove his bending. In the mid-130s AG, Tenzin was arrested after apprehending some vandals on the docks of Republic City. Aang came to police headquarters and apologized to Toph, asking to take charge of Tenzin and the vandals. Tenzin apologized as they flew back on Appa, but Aang reassured him that he could never be a disappointment. Aang introduced Tenzin to conflict mediation in the style of the air nomads. Tenzin could say how he was wronged, and the criminals had a chance to apologize before the air was cleansed and the resolution could be carried out. He watched Tenzin and the Vandals cleanse the airbender gates, and noted to Katara that it would not always be as easy as this, but Katara noted that Tenzin was still young, and he should be given the easy problems for the time being. The 100 years Aang had spent frozen in an iceberg while in the Avatar state drained much of his inherent life energy, and by his later years the strain of this began to weigh heavily upon his body. With his health failing and sensing his end was near, Aang tasked the Order of the White Lotus to search for and watch over the next Avatar. Eventually, at the relatively young biological age of 66, Aang passed away. He was reincarnated into a headstrong, hot-headed, and rebellious girl named Korra from the Southern Water Tribe. A massive statue of Avatar Aang was created on Aang Memorial Island, a small island located in Yue Bay. A teenage Aang is depicted wearing air nomad monk robes and holding a staff with the airbending symbol on top, overlooking the city he founded with the help of his friends. The statue was created and donated by the Fire Nation as a sign of peace and goodwill. As is tradition, a statue of Aang was also added to the inner sanctuary of the Southern Air Temple in order to keep the line of statues of past avatars up to date. His statue stood in the middle of the assemblage. At the age of 17, Korra moved from the safety of the Southern Water Tribe compound to the bustling streets of Republic City. However, every time she found herself in serious trouble and was on the brink of slipping into unconsciousness, she would be plagued by visions of Aang's encounter with Yangchen. Through these visions, it appeared Aang was attempting to warn Korra of the imminent threat that Yangchen's son, Councilman Tarlok, posed to her, though it was later revealed that he was actually trying to warn her about Amon. However, it was not until Korra was at an extremely low point in life due to losing her bending that she inadvertently summoned Aang's spirit for the first time. During their talk, Aang explained that he was there because Korra had asked him to be, as she had finally connected with her spiritual self due to being open to the greatest change by hitting her lowest point. Aided by all of the previous avatars who appeared behind him, Aang compassionately used energy bending to restore Korra's bending and passed on the knowledge of the art to her. After Korra lost her memory due to a spiritual infection, Aang appeared before her, taking over from Korra's own reflection, and reminded his successor of her status as the Avatar before making room for Roku to appear. When Tenzin was stuck in the fog of lost souls, stricken with doubt over his potential inability to pave the way for future airbenders and live up to his father's legacy, a vision of Aang appeared before him. Tenzin apologized to his father and said that he would never be the man he was. The image of Aang agreed with this, much to the younger airbender's shock, and continued by saying Tenzin should never have tried to mimic him in the first place, and that he was trying to hold on to a false perception of himself. Aang finished by saying that Tenzin was not him, and that he should not be him but instead be his own person. Aang's image transformed into an image of Tenzin, and his son finally stepped out of his father's shadow. While Unalaq was attacking Raava, Korra envisioned Aang among the Avatar lineup she had seen prior to regaining her bending, and his connection was the first to be lost. Korra. Korra was born to Tonraq and Senna in the Southern Water Tribe following the death of Avatar Aang in 153 AG. Her family lived in a small house in the outskirts of Wolf Cove. At the age of 4, she proudly introduced herself to the Order of the White Lotus as the new Avatar by performing water, earth, and firebending before them. She honed her waterbending under the tutelage of Katara, though her instinctive aggressive style was nothing like the calm, slow movements the elderly master tried to pass on. After Chief Unalaq learned that his niece was the Avatar, he constantly sought Tonraq's permission to train Korra in the spiritual ways of the Water Tribe, but his estranged brother shot him down. Since he secretly desired to indoctrinate Korra in the ways of the Red Lotus and coerce her to reopen the long-dormant spirit portals to release Vaatu, Unalaq commissioned Zahir, Ghazan, Minghua, and Pali to kidnap her in 158 AG. However, due to the effects of Tonraq, Chief Sokka, Fire Lord Zuko, and Councilman Tenzin, the attempt was thwarted, and the criminals were apprehended, although Unalaq's involvement remained unknown. After the incident, Tonraq and Tenzin decided to seclude the Avatar in the Southern Water Tribe compound away from the public eye as she pursued the bending arts. As a young girl, during one of her waterbending training sessions with Katara, Korra accidentally knocked the elderly woman to the ground by bending a pile of snow on her and quickly apologized. However, their session got cut short by Tonraq, who noticed a snowstorm was heading their way. When the winds carried the howls of a pack of polar bear dogs across the frozen tundra, Korra desired to go play with them but was forced to return home with her parents for safety. During the night, however, she sneaked out and braved the storm, intending to track down the pack and play with them. Stumbling upon a sold pup, which got separated from the pack in the storm, she gained the animal's trust by offering it some fish jerky, and started to hop around on all fours around her, desiring to play together. When the young Avatar realized after a while that she too had gotten herself lost in the raging storm, Korra urged the animal not to fear, as she was the Avatar, and proceeded to build a rudimentary igloo with her waterbending. Sheltered from the wind, she attempted to bend a small flame for heat, but subsequently lost control of it, startling herself and the polar bear pup. She quickly apologized to the animal, noting that she was not a good firebender yet due to Katara discouraging her from bending the other elements until she mastered waterbending. Musing that being the Avatar was not as fun as she thought it would be due to the abundance of rules, she found herself cheered up by the pup as it started licking her hand. Huddled together, the two youngsters eventually fell asleep. The next morning, Korra and the pup awoke from their slumber when Tonraq found and cracked open their shelter. She promptly introduced the polar bear dog to them as Naga and asked if she could keep her as she had lost her pack and needed a new family. Korra happily played with Naga in the snow while Tonraq and Senna discussed Naga's fate with Katara. Much to their mutual enthusiasm, Korra was allowed to keep her, and they all returned home, where the youngsters continued to play together. Inseparable during the following years growing up, Naga became Korra's best friend, animal guide, and main means of transport. While Korra demonstrated a prodigious talent in the arts of waterbending, earthbending, and firebending during her training sessions at the Southern Water Tribe compound. By 170 AG, at the age of 17, Korra had mastered all the elements except for airbending, which she was set to be taught by Tenzin as soon as he moved to the Southern Water Tribe. However, after Tenzin's move to her home fell through, Korra took matters into her own hands and stowed away on a ship, traveling to Republic City. Roaming through the city in search of Air Temple Island, she discovered that the bustling metropolis was not all that she had been told it was. She learned that there was a great deal of imbalance among its citizens, with triads and equalists running around. After defeating some members of the Triple Threat Triad, she found herself in trouble with Lin Beifong and her metal-bending police force. She was cleared of all charges due to Tenzin's intervention and eventually allowed to stay with him at the Air Temple to commence her airbending training there. However, progress was slow and the Avatar grew frustrated. To unwind, she joined the Fire Ferret's pro-bending team and befriended her teammates, brothers Mako and Bolin. When Bolin got kidnapped by the Equalists, Korra helped his brother find him. They tracked him down to an abandoned warehouse where they witnessed firsthand Amon's ability to strip a bender of their bending abilities. Although they managed to save Bolin, Amon left a deep impression on Korra, who grew fearsome of the Equalist leader. Regardless, she joined Councilman Tarlok's task force. While she worked to rid the city of the Equalists, she also kept training with the Bending brothers to win the Pro Bending Championship. Although they had some hard matches due to internal romantic struggles, they managed to reach the finale. However, after their match against the White Falls Wolfbats ended with their defeat due to the cheating of the other team, Amon and his Equalists attacked the Pro Bending arena, effectively destroying the building. Soon after, Korra discovered that Hiroshi Sato had ties with the Equalists, and as such she invited both Asami Sato and the Bending brothers to come live with her on the island. There, feeling insecure about herself as the Avatar, she and her friends formed a team with the purpose of patrolling the city and apprehending Equalists. As such, she angered Tarlok, and the councilman broke up their team by arresting all of Korra's friends. When she confronted Tarlok about his actions later on, the discussion erupted into a duel. As the Avatar was about to overpower the councilman, Tarlok revealed himself to be a bloodbender and subdued her with the ability. Korra was locked up in a secluded cabin in the mountains surrounding the city. In isolation, unable to escape, she meditated and connected with Aang, discovering the truth about Tarlok's heritage. However, when Amon and his Equalists ambushed the cabin, she managed to escape. In the aftermath of her escape, Amon launched his grand attack on the city. Korra and her friends fought back for a while, but the sheer number and power of the Equalists forced them on the run. Korra retreated into the tunnel system of the city, where she would await the arrival of reinforcements in the form of General Iroh and his united forces. However, he too proved to be no match for the Equalist machines, and Korra pulled the injured general out of the water. After this incident, she vowed to take the battle to Amon, and together with Mako, she set out to confront him. After having learned that he was truly a waterbender from the Northern Water Tribe, they eventually found him at the Pro Bending Arena, where he was holding a victory speech. The Avatar freed Tenzin and his children, though when she faced Amon, the Equalist leader managed to take away her bending. However, as she witnessed Amon on the verge of taking Mako's bending as well, she unlocked her airbending and managed to overpower Amon. After the Equalist's defeat, Korra traveled to the Southern Water Tribe, hoping that Katara could undo Amon's action. The old healer was unable to, however, and a heartbroken Korra ran off to grieve on her own. There, she finally managed to connect with her spiritual side, and as such, Aang and the other previous avatars helped to restore her bending, as well as bestow upon her the ability to restore other people's bending. Having regained her bending and mastered the avatar state, Korra and Mako became a couple. After the anti-bending revolution, Korra extensively used energy bending to restore the bending of the innocent benders Amon victimized with his blood bending, and trained with Tenzin to perfect her skill in airbending, achieving the status as a fully realized avatar. Although Tenzin wanted her to accompany him on a journey to visit all of the air temples, Korra was adamant about first attending the Glacier Spirits Festival. However, after she learned there from her uncle, Unalaq, that it had been Tenzin and Tonraq's decision to keep her secluded in the compound, she broke with her airbending master and accepted Unalaq's offer to become her spiritual guide. As the first step in her training, Korra journeyed to the South Pole and opened the Southern Spirit Portal, causing the spirit lights to return to the south. When they made their way back to the Southern Tribe, Korra discovered that in the meantime, the Northern Navy had arrived and occupied the harbor. Although Unalaq claimed it was an attempt to reconnect both tribes, the Southerners were not pleased with the Northern presence, and Korra was forced to mediate between her own people, causing her to be seen as a traitor by some. When Korra learned of Varric's plan to kidnap Unalaq, she feared that her father was involved. She thwarted the attempt and discovered Tonraq had nothing to do with the Southern Water Tribe rebels. However, her parents were arrested and tried for treason nonetheless, a trial during which only her mother was acquitted. In an attempt to free her father, Korra confronted Judge Hota and learned that the entire trial and Tonraq's initial banishment from the north had all been orchestrated by Unalaq. Enraged, Korra and her friends, with the help of Varric, freed Tonraq and the other rebels from northern custody, effectively commencing a Water Tribe civil war. Korra and Team Avatar journeyed back to Republic City in an attempt to persuade President Raiko to deploy the United Forces fleet to aid the South. With tensions rising between the two tribes and the pressure to do something on Korra increased, she also began to have relationship troubles with Mako, and after he had informed Raiko of her plan to go to General Iroh behind his back, they broke up. In a last attempt to gather support for her tribe, Korra left for the Fire Nation to ask the Fire Lord for help. However, she never reached her destination, as she was first attacked by her cousins Desna and Eska, and later ambushed and swallowed by a dark spirit. Korra washed ashore on an island inhabited by the Bonti, though the attack of the spirit had infected her avatar spirit, leaving her without her memory. She was lowered by the tribe into a pool of spirit water, where she reconnected with her avatar spirit by learning how Wan became the first avatar by fusing with Raava during harmonic convergence in 9829 BG, and how they defeated Vaatu. With the warning of the shaman that harmonic convergence was nearly upon them again, Korra tracked down Tenzin and his family at the Eastern Air Temple and asked for his help to enter the spirit world in order for her to close the southern spirit portal and prevent Vaatu's escape. It was with Janora's help, however, that she managed to cross over, though soon after they arrived, the girls got separated. Korra found herself in a dark forest where she reverted to her 4-year-old self, though with the guidance of Iroh, she was able to revert the change. Making her way over to the spirit portals, she discovered that Janora had been captured by Unalaq, who threatened to destroy the girl's soul if Korra did not open the northern spirit portal as well. Korra complied, though as opposed to earning Janora's freedom, she was attacked by Unalaq and dark spirits. Korra managed to escape with the help of a dragonbird spirit and return to the physical world. Having gathered reinforcements in the form of Team Avatar and Varric's battleship, Korra made her way to the south to enter the spirit world through the portal there and closed the portals from the inside before harmonic convergence started. Although their initial attempt to breach through the northern defenses at the portal ended up with their capture, the team managed to escape due to Bumi's intervention. While Tenzin, Kaya, and Bumi would look for Janora, Mako and Bolin would hold back Unalaq while Korra closed the portals. She did not manage to close them in time, however, and Vaatu managed to escape at the start of the celestial event. Although she tried to re-imprison the Spirit of Darkness, she could not prevent him from fusing with Unalaq and becoming the Dark Avatar. With the fate of the world at stake, Korra engaged Unalaq in battle. She was overpowered by him, however, and he extracted Raava out of her and destroyed the Light Spirit, effectively severing Korra's connection to all her past lives. While Unalaq, now transformed into Unavaatu, had traveled to Republic City, Korra meditated within the Tree of Time to connect with the cosmic energy, which enabled her to spiritually project an enormous apparition of her own spirit. Traveling via the spirit lights to Republic City as well, Korra engaged Unavaatu in battle. During the fight, she searched the Dark Avatar for a sign of Raava, as she knew that dark could not live without light, and upon the destruction of one spirit, it would always live on in the other. Distracted by her mission, Unavaatu took advantage of the unguarded moment to trap Korra's soul with spirit bending. As Korra's spirit was on the verge of being corrupted, Janora's spiritual projection appeared and revealed Raava within Unavaatu. Korra pulled the light spirit out before using spirit bending herself to purify Unavaatu, dissipating him in the process. With harmonic convergence nearing its end, Korra, Raava, and Janora returned to the spirit world, where Korra and Raava fused again as the convergence ended, thus restarting the Avatar cycle. Upon her return to the physical world, Korra declared the Water Tribe civil war over, and the South an independent nation with Tonraq as its chief. She also announced that both spirit portals would remain open, ushering in a new era in which humans and spirits coexisted. Shortly after the Unalaq crisis, Korra temporarily lost her bending due to being attacked by chi-blocking darts. On a quest to regain her abilities, she fought off the Triple Threat Triad and the residual Equalists, who had all been enlisted by Hundan, as well as hordes of dark spirits. She eventually tracked Hundan down to the spirit world, where she learned that he was out for vengeance due to the actions of one of her past lives. Despite facing fierce mental and physical challenges, she eventually managed to regain her ability to enter the Avatar state and overpowered Hundan, using her spirit bending to dissipate him and his brother. In the following week, Korra continued to struggle with the changes that harmonic convergence brought. The spirit vines created by the Dark Avatar had taken over parts of Republic City, leaving countless citizens homeless, and her failure to remove them caused tension between her and President Raiko. Additionally, the shift in the world's energy gave several people across the Earth Kingdom the ability to airbend. After her clash with Raiko reached its zenith and her banishment from the city, Korra and her allies set out to scour the Earth Kingdom in search of these new benders to offer them training and guidance. Despite initial failures to persuade the new airbenders to abandon their lifestyle in order to rebuild the Air Nation, they eventually managed to persuade Kai to join them. They journeyed to Ba Sing Se, where they eventually discovered that Earth Queen Huting had been conscripting the airbenders into her army, holding them captive underneath the Earth Queen's temple. Before they could formulate a plan to free them, Lin joined them and informed them of the escape of 4 dangerous criminals who were after Korra. She dismissed the threat, however, and decided to stay focused on freeing the airbenders. Successfully fighting off the Dai Li and escaping the city, the airbenders and Tenzin traveled to the Northern Air Temple, while Korra, her friends, and Lin continued the search for more benders. Their search led them to Zhao Fu, where they met up with Suyin Beifong, Lin's half-sister, whose daughter Opal had become an airbender. Although the plan had been to send Opal to the Northern Air Temple, the team stayed at Zaofu for a while on Suyin's suggestion. While training Opal in the basics, Korra was taught metal bending by Suyin, becoming the first metal bending avatar. The threat Lin warned her about eventually caught up with her, and Korra was kidnapped by Zahir and his 3 companions, Gazan, Pali, and Minghua. Before they could escape, however, she was saved by her friends, and after discovering that Ai Wei had led the criminals inside the city, Team Avatar left the Metal Clan in order to track him down and find out why Korra was being targeted. Following him to the Misty Palms Oasis, the team discovered that Ai Wei was meeting Zahir at Zaibao's grove. In an attempt to follow them, they staked out Ai Wei's room at the Misty Palms Inn, though eventually discovered that the grove was located in the spirit world. Korra entered the spirit world via meditation herself and found Ai Wei being confronted by Zahir. Zahir promptly disposed of Ai Wei by throwing him into the fog of lost souls, leaving the 2 of them to talk. Being allowed to ask questions, Korra discovered that Zahir and his associates were part of the Red Lotus, who desired to radically change the world by doing away with the separation of the 4 nations. Meanwhile, Korra's meditating form was taken by Asami on Naga as Gazan and Minghua attempted to kidnap her. Although they managed to escape the Red Lotus, however, they were captured by Earth Kingdom soldiers since the Earth Queen had declared them enemies of the kingdom. Korra and Asami eventually managed to free themselves and prevent being taken back to Ba Sing Se. Their escape left them and the airship crew stranded in the Siwang Desert, forcing them all to work together to reach the safety of the Misty Palms Oasis, where they once again met up with Mako, Bolin, Lin, Tonrak, and Zuko, and learned that Zahir had killed the Earth Queen and threatened to do the same with the Airbenders at the Northern Air Temple, lest Korra surrender herself to them. Their forces were strengthened by Suyin and her security force, and the team set course for the Northern Air Temple. On the way, Korra decided that she would give herself up, as it was the only way to save the Airbenders. As such, she met Zahir atop Lahima's peak, while Asami, Mako, and Bolin would check on the Airbenders at the temple, and Tonrak and the Metalbenders would scale the mountain to be her backup. Zahir double-crossed them, however, and despite Pali's demise in the ensuing battle, he managed to escape with an unconscious Korra. When she woke up, Korra found herself suspended in chains in an underground prison hold, and was administered poison through pores in her skin. She was told the poison would force her body into the Avatar state, enabling the Red Lotus to end the Avatar cycle if they killed her in the Avatar state. She tried to fight it off, though she eventually succumbed to the poison's influence and the Avatar state was triggered. The moment she remained in the state, she was attacked by Gazan and Minghua. Using her enhanced strength and bending abilities, she managed to free herself from her chains and confronted Zahir in a duel, while Bolin and Mako took care of the others. With the Avatar state, Korra was able to hold her own against Zahir, even force him on the defense, though she could not keep up battling both him and the poison, eventually succumbing to its effect. Rendered defenseless, Zahir took the opportunity to suffocate her, though before he could finish his attack, they were both trapped in a tornado created by Jinora and the novice airbenders. Freed from Zahir's hold, Korra managed to ensnare Zahir and pull him down with her, enabling Lin and Suyin to trap him in an earthen prison. Despite her victory, Korra was left on the verge of death due to the poison within her. When Jinora recognized the poison to be a metallic solution, Suyin tried to bend it out of her, saving her life. However, the cumulative trauma from the poison and hitting the ground after Zahir sent her plummeting off of a cliff had taken a great toll on her, confining her to a wheelchair in a physically and emotionally weakened state. After Jinora's ceremony, Korra changed into her normal attire and was set to board the steamship heading toward the Southern Water Tribe, together with her parents, Naga and Kaya. Before boarding, she was given a letter by Bolin, who expressed his delight over becoming pen pals with her. Although Asami inquired if she would be fine on her own as the businesswoman would be happy to accompany her, Korra declined the offer, stating that some weeks by herself to heal would do her good. Tenzin reassured her that he, Jinora, and the Air Nation would try their best to take care of things in her absence so she could focus all her energy on healing. 3 weeks later, while staying at the Southern Water Tribe Royal Palace, Korra had a nightmare about Zahir asphyxiating her. She woke up, severely distressed and breathing heavily. Korra went out on the balcony for some fresh air and to look at the spirit lights, where she was found by her mother. Senna approached her, worrying about her well-being, and urged her to seek help from Katara. She agreed and received a hug from her mother, who expressed her love for Korra. While being healed by Katara, Korra was told that the mercury poison had caused considerable internal damage. Inquiring if the Elder could fix it, Korra was told that her recovery was dependent on her own efforts, though Katara would help guide her through the process. Korra expressed her desire to recover and was urged to visualize her big toe moving, a feat she managed to accomplish much to her delight. Korra subsequently moved to the parallel bars in order to try walking. Leaning heavily on the bars, she managed to keep herself standing, though before she could take a step, she was overwhelmed by the memory of herself being poisoned by the Red Lotus, causing her to lose her balance and fall down. Although Katara comforted her, emphasizing that she was safe there, and urging her to use her mind to overcome her pain, Korra refused to try again, declaring herself done for that day. Throughout her stay in the South, Korra received and read the letters sent to her by Asami, Mako, and Bolin. Korra kept up her intensive physiotherapy training, though nearly 6 months later she lost patience due to a lack of significant progress. Lamenting about her inability to take more than a few steps without collapsing, she snapped at Katara in her frustration over being dependent on others for everything while her friends were helping the world, and the elderly woman could not heal her. Immediately realizing that she should not have addressed Katara that way, she apologized and was told to let go of her anger and frustration. Upon admitting that she was tired of her situation and the senselessness of it all, Katara tried to comfort her by sharing the sense of loss Aang felt over losing his entire culture, and telling her that he had tried to find meaning in the suffering and eventually even succeeded to find peace. When Korra asked what she would find, she was offered the response that whatever it was, it would be interesting to find out. Korra subsequently tried to walk again with the aid of the parallel bars, and managed to walk the short distance toward Naga, falling happily against the polar bear dog's chest. Korra continued to improve, and by the time Tenzin arrived at the Southern Water Tribe compound, Korra had improved to the point where she could once again run around and fight. As the airbending master climbed off Ugi, she warmly embraced him, exclaiming how much she had missed him. Upon receiving the compliment that she looked great, she dragged Tenzin off toward the training grounds, eager to show him how much she had improved. She sparred against 3 firebenders, and although she started strong, she was knocked down after she was once again overcome with a vision of Zahir flying down upon her. Helped back to her feet by Tenzin, who declared the sparring match to be over, she angrily stated that she believed she had been ready. As Tenzin tried to put her at ease by pointing out that there was no shame in taking the time needed to make a full recovery, as her duties as the Avatar could wait, Korra asked about the Earth Kingdom since she knew it was still in chaos. Hearing that the situation had been stabilized by Kuvira, she grew sad, stating that the Metalbender was doing her job. Before Tenzin could tell her that she merely needed to be patient, Korra glared at him, threatening that if he would voice the thought, she would water smack him in the mouth. Frustrated about the situation, she left the sparring ring. For 2 years, Korra continued her training and recovery at the Southern Water Tribe. At one point, she wrote a letter back to Asami in which she apologized for not having written before. She revealed that the past couple of years had been the hardest of her life, and even though she had recovered physically, she still could not enter the Avatar state, and was often plagued by memories of Zahir and the Red Lotus attack. She admitted that she worried she might never fully recover, despite her best efforts. Korra implored Asami not to inform Mako and Bolin about the letter, as she did not want to hurt their feelings, and felt that they would not understand her as opposed to Asami. While having a meal with her parents, an absent-minded Korra was playing with her food until her mother's inquiry about her well-being snapped her out of her thought. She expressed her desire to return to Republic City, hoping that it could speed up her recovery due to it being the place of action and where her friends were. Korra declined Tanrak's offer to get the White Lotus to prepare for her departure, insisting on going alone as it would give her the chance to clear her head. En route, Korra briefly stopped at a beachside village to purchase supplies. Upon requesting the local fishmonger for 2 lobster crabs, she was recognized as the Avatar and asked to pose for a picture just like Avatar Aang had done decades before. The man's ramblings about avatars were cut short when another vendor shouted about a robbery in progress, and the fishmonger pushed Korra to intervene. Although she intercepted the thieves, the 2 men easily defeated her, leaving Korra lying on the beach in shame. Korra eventually made it to Republic City, though as she neared Air Temple Island, she saw herself in the Avatar state standing atop one of the rocks near the island, glaring menacingly at her. Realizing she was not ready to return, she turned her boat and left Yue Bay, docking somewhere in a deserted area where she obtained Earth Kingdom clothes, shed all her Water Tribe identifiers, and cut her hair. Korra traveled to the spirit world through the Northern Spirit Portal and made her way to the Tree of Time. Her meditation in the hollow of the tree was interrupted by chattering spirits who were debating among themselves whether or not she was the Avatar. When Korra verified her identity as such, she revealed to them that she had been away for a while due to sustaining severe injuries in her last big battle, which had left her unable to contact Raava. She admitted to meditating in the Tree of Time, since the last time she had done so, it had shown her a myriad of images, and she'd hoped it would be the case again, figuring it could help her reconnect with Raava and access the Avatar state. When it proved to be unsuccessful, she declined the spirit's help, deciding that she needed to figure it out on her own, since the help of others had not borne any fruit so far. In order to keep people from worrying about her, Korra wrote letters to her parents, telling them she was pleased to have returned to Air Temple Island and see her friends again. In reality, however, Korra was roaming the physical world by herself, crossing icy seas, hiking up volcanoes, and traversing the desert, all the while seeing an apparition of herself in the Avatar state. While she was wandering the desert, Korra saw Raava atop a nearby dune, though by the time she had scampered to the top, the light spirit was gone, having only been a mirage. 6 months after having left the South Pole, Korra made her way to a small Earth Kingdom town at night, where she was once again haunted by her Avatar apparition. Determined to end the haunting, Korra confronted the apparition, though lost. When she encountered a puppy in the middle of the road, she decided to follow the dog after it chased away her apparition and ended up at the foggy swamp. Losing track of the animal, which turned out to be the light spirit whom she had met at the Tree of Time, she was once again attacked by her apparition, who dragged her down in a hallucinatory pool of mercury. She eventually woke up in the home of Toph Beifong, who had found her unconscious in the mud. Desiring to get back into Avatar fighting shape, Korra asked Toph for help and eventually learned that she was still carrying around traces of mercury. When she was plagued by another vision of Zahir trying to asphyxiate her in the Avatar state, as Toph tried to remove the remainder of the poison, she told Korra that she would have to bend the metal out of herself, since she was subconsciously fighting Toph's attempts to remove it out of fear of getting injured again. When Korra made her way through the swamp 2 days later, she was haunted by visions of her old enemies once again. Though with Toph's help, she figured out that she needed to face her fears and stop fighting her old enemies if she ever wished to be able to deal with future threats. In order to speed up her recovery, Toph took her to the Banyan Grove tree, where she reconnected with herself in the world. After being found by Jinora, Ikki, and Milo, they all returned to Toph's dwelling in the swamp, where Korra eventually managed to bend all of the residual poison out of her system. In order to let Kuvira and the rest of the world know that the Avatar was back, Korra and the 3 airbenders traded the swamp for Zaofu, though they discovered that the military of the Earth Empire was already camped at its gates. Believing that conflict had only made things worse in the past, Korra set out to negotiate with Kuvira, though she was urged to convince Suyin to give the city up. Upon her return to the city, Korra learned that Suyin had left with Wei and Wing to sneak into Kuvira's camp and deal with the threat themselves. When Kuvira announced over the city's communication system that Suyin and the twins had been captured, Korra tried to reason with the army commander, though she ended up being challenged for a one-on-one duel for the fate of Zaofu. Kuvira had the upper hand until Korra entered the Avatar state. On the verge of ending Kuvira, however, she was plagued by another hallucination of herself in the Avatar state, allowing the army commander to recover and defeat her. As Kuvira moved to kill her, she was saved by Jinora and Opal and escaped from Zaofu with them, Ikki, and Milo. Returning to Republic City, Korra met up with Asami and Mako, though their reunion soon became tense due to their 3-year separation. When Prince Wu was kidnapped, the trio gave chase, tracking the royal down to a train departing from Central City Station. Despite the team's continuous bickering, they found Wu and freed him, though they were soon after forced on the defense by several Earth Empire agents. Working together, however, they managed to hold them off and escape. The 3 friends made amends before Mako retreated to the Sato estate with Wu, and Korra and Asami returned to Air Temple Island. As Korra mulled over her past experiences, she became doubtful over her abilities as the Avatar, though with the support of Asami and Tenzin, she became once again determined to restore balance in the world. When Jinora asked for her and Opal's help to search for Ryu, who had gone missing with his tour group in the Spirit Wilds, Korra discovered via the plants that Kuvira was harvesting roots from the foggy swamp. Splitting for Jinora, she left to warn the world leaders about the impending danger, though she was soon contacted by Jinora again, who called for help as she was being attacked by the vines. With Mako's help, Korra discovered that Jinora, Ryu, and the other tourist souls had been trapped in the spirit world, though after failing to meditate in, being blocked again by Zahir's memory, she concluded that she needed to face the Red Lotus leader. When Zahir noted that her spiritual block was a conscious choice, Korra snapped at him for having created the worst dictator the Earth Kingdom had ever seen, which led Zahir to offer to guide her into the spirit world. Although Korra initially refused his help, she let him guide her through her traumatic experience, and she managed to make it into the spirit world, where Raava's spirit lit up within her. Together, they found and rescued the trapped souls. To help the United Republic prepare for battle, Korra asked the spirits to help defend their new home, though they refused to take part in human wars. When she later learned that Kuvira's attack was imminent, Korra and Team Avatar set out to destroy the train tracks with which they presumed Kuvira would transport her spirit energy cannon to Republic City. Much to her shock, however, she discovered that Kuvira was already nearing the city and had instead mounted the weapon on the Colossus, an enormous mecha suit. While the Earth Empire military forced the United Forces to surrender, Korra formed an airbender stealth team and kidnapped Baatar Jr. in order to force him to try and talk Kuvira out of conquering the United Republic of Nations. The plan failed, however, and they were nearly all killed when she blew up the Future Industries factory in which they were all hiding. While it was decided that Asami and Varrick, with the help of Hiroshi and Zhu Li, would adjust the prototypes of the Hummingbird mecha-suits in order to cut through the platinum, Korra and the other benders faced the Colossus in an attempt to slow it down. After Asami and Hiroshi managed to cut a hole in the suit, which cost Hiroshi his life, Korra, Mako, Bolin, Lin, and Suyin infiltrated the mecha-suit. While Lin and Suyin took down the cannon, which ended up being discarded in the Spirit Wilds, Korra faced Kuvira, though their battle was interrupted when Mako and Bolin caused the engine to explode. The two women continued their fight inside the Spirit Wilds, where Kuvira fired the Spirit Energy Cannon at Korra. Although she dove out of the way of the beam, the cannon charged itself with the surrounding spirit vines and overloaded. When the beam threatened to kill Kuvira, Korra jumped in front of her and, entering the Avatar state, held the beam at bay, though the enormous surge of energy expanded around them and exploded, creating a new spirit portal. Korra and Kuvira were thrown into the spirit world. Seeing her opportunity, Korra explained that she saw a lot of herself in Kuvira, stating that they were both fierce and determined to succeed, sometimes even without thinking things through. When the metal bender snapped that she had merely been trying to help her people in the absence of the Avatar, Korra understood that Kuvira had only been trying to create a place where she and her people would never have to feel vulnerable again, and sympathized with the hardships that come from a life as an orphan. She managed to convince Kuvira to surrender, and when they both exited the spirit world via the portal, Kuvira gave herself up to Lin and Suyin, acknowledging that the Avatar had saved her life and possessed a power beyond what she could ever hope to achieve. Later, Korra attended Varrick and Zhu Li's wedding at Air Temple Island, during which she learned that Wu planned to abolish the Earth monarchy and establish independent states, with democratically elected governments akin to the United Republic of Nations instead, a cause for which she pledged her support. When Korra later distanced herself from the party and gazed over the skyline of Republic City, she was joined by Tenzin. Talking about how much she had already changed the world and how much more she desired to do, they were eventually interrupted by Asami, and Tenzin left the two women to themselves. Korra apologized to Asami for having been absent for 3 years and tried to comfort her for the loss of her father. When Asami stated that she did not feel like returning to the party and could use a vacation, Korra offered to go with her anywhere she wanted. The two decided to journey to the spirit world, and upon stepping into the spirit portal, they turned to each other and both held hands while gazing lovingly into each other's eyes, starting their romantic relationship together. Korra and Asami spent some time together exploring the spirit world, although their vacation was cut short by one disgruntled spirit causing them to lose their supplies. Before they left, they shared their first kiss, with Korra noting that they had been able to spend a few wonderful days together. The new couple chose to journey to the southern portal and pay a visit to Korra's parents and tell them about their new relationship. Although Korra's parents were fully supportive, Korra grew offended when Tonraq suggested that they keep their relationship private from anyone who might disapprove, and abruptly left her parents. Korra was reassured by Asami that her parents were likely just trying to keep her safe as they made their way back to Republic City via the portal. Arriving back in the city, Korra discovered that the new portal was the site of a property dispute between the land's owner, Yangchen, and the Air Nation, who claimed that the portal was now a spiritually sacred site. Meanwhile, the Dragon Eel spirit urged Korra to close the new portals, as it would only lead to new disputes between humans and spirits. Korra and Asami returned to the evacuee camp, where they were welcomed by the rest of their friends and allies, and took note of the distress faced by the evacuated citizens of Republic City. Korra decided to meet with Raiko, asking him to provide financial aid for the evacuees and for the city to buy the land off Kim to settle the dispute, but the president rejected both suggestions, citing the nation's financial difficulties. Frustrated, Korra returned to Air Temple Island, where Kaya complimented her and Asami on their new relationship. Kaya revealed her own sexuality to Korra, explaining that each of the nations had their own view on same-sex relationships, and that she would always be there for Korra if she needed support. Korra was then greeted by Mako and Bolin, but the group was interrupted by Janora's spirit projection, informing them of a new conflict at the spirit portal. The group flew to the portal via flying bison, only to see spirits trying to attack humans at the portal, and saw that several Triple Threat Triad members were present. Korra fought off the Triad members after they started attacking Asami and witnessed the Triad's new leader, Toguka, being disfigured by a spirit attack. After the confrontation, Korra kissed Asami, revealing their relationship to all of their friends. Following the battle, Korra and the airbenders ventured through the portal, only to see that it had decayed, and had been abandoned by the spirits following the new conflicts with humans. Several withered vines began attacking the group after Ikki tried to touch one of them, and Korra was able to hold off the plants with her firebending before the group escaped through the portal. They arrived in the material world to find that the united forces had started to occupy the area, which Korra believed would only anger the spirits further. Korra tried to convince the president to order the troops to pull away from the portal, but the president refused, harshly criticizing Korra for her part in creating the portal in the first place. Back at the evacuee camp, Korra and her friends encouraged Zhu Li to run against Raiko in the upcoming presidential election. The following morning, Korra learned that the Creeping Crystal Triad had tried to extort Asami and offered to deal with their leader, but Asami told her she did not have to intervene in all of her troubles and offered to take Korra on a date that evening. However, Asami did not turn up to the date, and Korra called Mako and Bolin to back her up in going to the Creeping Crystal's headquarters in search of Asami. Jargala, the Triad leader, denied kidnapping Asami, while Mako revealed that Wanyang Kim had also been kidnapped. The team soon discovered that Toguka had kidnapped Kim and that he was likely responsible for Asami's disappearance. Korra entered the Avatar state in order to battle the Triad, but with Toguka revealing that Asami would die if Korra did not do what she said, she exited the Avatar state. Korra worked with the police to track down the triple threats and struck a deal with Jargala to team up with her Triad in order to take down the Creeping Crystal's rivals. After witnessing Toguka and his hostages board an airship, Korra borrowed Ugi and flew to release Asami from captivity. Now alerted of Korra's presence, Toguka gave an order to release poison gas to the city, but Asami managed to pilot the ship through the portal and into the spirit world. Toguka battled Korra and successfully chi-blocked her, but Asami swerved the ship to make the attacker lose his balance before the ship touched down on the ground. Although Toguka escaped, Kim agreed to relinquish his claims to the land around the portal in thanks for the Avatar saving his life. Several weeks later, Korra witnessed Zhu Li's election as president and her decision to grant the land around the portal to the Air Nation. She met with Tonraq again and fully reconciled with him for their earlier misunderstanding before she and Asami declared their love for one another. 3 months after the invasion of the United Republic, Kuvira's trial began to commence, while Wu announced the beginning of the Earth Kingdom's election and its democratic transition. Korra and her friends were brought to a meeting with President Moon and were shocked to discover an Earth Empire holdout still operating in the state of Gaoling, the same region where the first elections were due to be held. After meeting with Kuvira to acquire more information about the new de facto Earth Empire leader, Guan, she came to the conclusion that the former dictator was now a broken woman, and thought it was possible for Kuvira to come and talk the Earth Empire holdout into surrendering. The president agreed to Kuvira's temporary release and traveled with Team Avatar to Gaoling via a Future Industries airship. After arriving in the city, Korra grew somewhat skeptical of the elections, as the only two candidates were remnants of the bureaucratic Earth Kingdom monarchy. When Guan began to march on the city, Kuvira began to intimidate him, but Asami had the woman shocked via an electrode belt after she tried to initiate violence. Guan also revealed his intention to run in the election democratically instead of conquering the city. The group locked up Kuvira in a platinum pod in the airship and decided to try to convince Toph to run in the election, as she had much more of a hope in defeating Guan than the other candidates. Korra and Wu readied to venture into the foggy swamp on Naga, while their other allies left for Zaofu to hold Kuvira there until the end of the election. Korra sensed Toph's location through the spirit vines and ended up at her cave in order to convince her to join. The elderly earthbender initially refused, but Korra and the king convinced Toph to run after Wu told Toph about a vision he received of the late queen. The group returned to Gaoling with Toph, registering her as an official candidate, but were shocked to see Kuvira disguised as an Earth Empire soldier on their way to the airship. Kuvira claimed that the rest of Team Avatar had been brainwashed, which Toph confirmed to be true via her truth-seeing. The group saw a Metal Clan airship approach the airfield, as Kuvira had informed Su Yin of the situation earlier. A small confrontation broke out with Guan's forces, and although Korra was able to retrieve a brainwashed Asami, the king was lost to Earth Empire forces. After Korra arrived in Zaofu, she learned that Kuvira and Baatar Jr. had been able to put aside their differences to work on the project to reverse the new brainwashing technique. Asami snapped away Korra's attempts at affection before the process began. Initially, the attempts found little success, but after Baatar Jr. experimented on Kuvira's untampered mind, the technique could successfully be adjusted, and Asami's brainwashing was cured. Korra began to comfort her girlfriend, but then the group was informed that Guan had been able to win the election during their time away from Gaoling. Korra called President Moon only to be ordered to immediately bring Kuvira back to Republic City until it could be decided what they should do next. Korra spent the night with Asami, trying to further assure her that all was well, but Su Yin arrived to tell them that Kuvira had escaped in the night. The couple flew to Gaoling on Juicy with Toph, Su Yin, and Opal, where they battled soldiers at the re-education camp, until Kuvira forced Guan to surrender. After the city's population and Korra's allies were cured of their brainwashing, Wu announced that the Earth Kingdom would need a longer transitional time to democracy, with each state being able to set its own election timetables. The team returned to Republic City to see Kuvira enter a new guilty plea and receive a less severe sentence due to her actions, with Korra believing that Kuvira had been able to redeem herself. By 174 AG, Republic City Park had been renamed Avatar Korra Park in commemoration of Korra's acts of heroism, and a statue of her was erected there as well. Korra is a very respected figure in the Southern Water Tribe community of Republic City, and she has supported the continued growth of the Southern Water Tribe Cultural Center. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.